Hello, friends. What's happening? It's Tuesday again. What are y'all up to? What's going on? What's new? Um, so I am currently months into the redesign of the Learn with Jason site, and over the last few weeks, I feel like I had a bit of a breakthrough. I think I kind of I tend to go in phases with projects where I can't just do a project all at once, right? And I think this is sort of a product of being a little bit good at everything, but not actually good at any of it. So, for example, I have been a designer in the past, and I have been a product manager. I do admin work. I've been in product. I've done like everywhere you could be in a company. I've been there, but I didn't really get good at any of it except for the engineering part. Um, and y'all have been watching this show. I think even the engineering part is up for debate. But so I'm whenever I work on a project, there tends to be this sort of slow phased process where I know I need to solve a problem. And so I let the idea marinate for a long time, and I start to get an idea of how I want to solve that problem. And then once I've decided how, I have to start figuring out like, okay, but what does it actually look like, right? And so then I'll go into this endless cycle of redesigning and redesigning because I always think there's this quote from Ira Glass that I love, where he says that whenever you're learning a new skill, there's this long period where your taste outstrips your talent, and so you can see that something isn't as good as it can be, but you don't know how to get it there. And I feel like that's where I'm permanently at with design, because I can always see things that I'm not happy with in any given design, and so that tends to cause me to like overthink to restart, throw it all out, let it sit, just not be able to finish. And then I finally, after weeks or months, will hit the design that I'm like, you know what, that's the right design. Like I can see ways that this would be better, but I'm not going to stress about that because it's definitely good enough. And then I'll get to the building part, right? But then when you get into the building part, inevitably I've severely overcomplicated it because I have all these visions for how things are going to work. So I almost always build every project at least twice, if not three times, because the first time I'm untangling the mess in my head. The second time, hopefully, what I'm doing is I'm taking the untangled mess and building something that's actually usable. And if I need to, then the third time is once I hit the second part of the mess and realize that there's no way that's going to be maintainable, I'll step back and try it again. Now, this is not efficient, right? Um, because if anybody who's been watching the show for a while, you know how long I've been working on this redesign. And part of that is due to the fact that I just don't get a lot of dedicated like sit down and code time these days. But a lot of it is because I'm like readjusting, reimagining. So I did things like I originally built the site on Astro and then realized how much work it was going to be to put together an admin interface. So I backed off of that and I moved the whole thing over into Sanity, right? Now the Sanity stuff is working great. I have some questions, and actually there's a stream tomorrow, I think it is. Um, yeah, tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific, I'm gonna get on a call with Knut from the Sanity team, and we're gonna walk through sort of what my challenges were, and he's either gonna show me how to fix them, or we're gonna open bug reports. And so that's it, but then there's there's the database part, but then there's also the membership part, because I don't really love the the idea of putting everything through a third party. And granted, I mean, it's all just degrees of third party. So I'm talking about Stripe as opposed to Patreon, or using YouTube or Discord or Twitch for subscriptions directly. Because ultimately, what I want is I want to be able to let people uh, watch early release stuff, right? Or potentially like members only stuff. Like I've been doing the Do It Anyway series. I don't really like publishing those in like indiscriminately. but I like doing them and I want to share them. But I think I want to maybe make those members only. You know, who knows? Maybe we'll see. We'll see what I do. But to do that, I need a payment processor because I need to be able to manage memberships. And then to have memberships, I need authentication. I decided to use Clerk because I didn't want to roll my own. And then I need to make sure that all of that is connected properly so that when you log in, we can check what your status is. We can make sure that you've got an account in the in the Sanity system, because if you have been on one of the shows, I want to make sure that you can update your links and your thumbnail and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of moving parts in this, and that's all before we actually get into the thing that I need to do, which is write content and put video and stuff up on the site. So that's been a very long process, and it's all the kind of stuff that I'm just sort of learning and working through, and I am very close, I think, to being able to launch this new site, at least in beta. Like, I might do the thing where I put the banner up at the top. It's like, there's a new version of this site. Try it, and have the feedback form so that people can tell me where it's broken. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But what's going on? So what's up, Ukasha? Welcome. What's up, Bridgewater? Afternoon. All right, East Coast. What's up, not your BF? Santa Lucia, what's up? Any tips for consistency? Oh yeah, all right. Let me get through some hellos and we'll come back to this. Yeah, many hats. 10:30 p.m. Dang, wait, 10:30 p.m. That means, is that India? Build, throwaway. Yeah, exactly, right. How to get remote jobs? We'll come back to that. Create a business using WordPress. We'll come back to that. What's up, Zahir? How you doing? Corey talking about tests and yeah, that would actually be, yeah. You know what? Send me a DM or an email or something, and a little bit more about what you're talking about, and I mean, maybe, yeah, probably. Okay, so let's dig into some questions. We got some good ones. So, any tips for consistency? Yes and no, right? Like, the actual tip is just keep doing it, even when you don't want to. But as far as making that more approachable, so the thing that's been big for me has been recognizing the different, like, capacities that I have, right? Because I am, my capacity for new things, for example, is limited to basically one. So if I'm trying to add a new habit to my life, it has to be the one thing that's changing, right? Like, if I'm in a spell of travel where I have a bunch of conferences, I'm I don't know, trying to change jobs, I'm doing a remodel on my house, whatever the thing is, right? I also know that during that time, I just won't have the mental capacity to actually pick up a new habit. And the double-edged sword of that is that if I know that about myself, a very clever procrastination technique that I have is to constantly have something going on so that I never have to actually buckle down and do the thing, right? And so there's some discipline there, for me especially, because I love to make plans, and a lot of times my plans involve things I've never done before or that throw me out of my routine. And that means I'll be putting off whatever the next thing is that I want to do forever, right? But so there's a couple things that are important about this. I think the first one is I've learned that if I can choose a thing that I'm going to do and I make space for it, and it's typically like 2 months is the amount of space that I want to make for it, where it's like the thing that I do. And if I can make that thing my number one priority, I am going to, I don't know, send follow-up. I'm going to send out cold emails and follow-ups on everything that I've said I'm going to do so that I can grow my business. I know I'm going to do that, and that's the thing I focus on. And if somebody says, like, do this other thing, I'm going to say I will after this is done. And what that has meant for me is that as I'm building out these habits, after about 2 months, it's no longer something that requires ultimate focus. I've discovered most of the mystery of it, and now it's a matter of repetition, right? So for me, running Learn with Jason, for example, I've been doing since 2018. There's not anything new about that show except what I'm learning, like the specific guests that I have on and the thing that I'm learning. The mechanics of the show don't change. I have a process for booking. I have a virtual assistant who helps me with getting the show like listed on websites and make sure that it's on the Discord and all those things. Shout out to Aiden. Um, all of that stuff just works. And so I don't have to put a lot of mental energy into the running of Learn with Jason. And over the last few months, I've been focused heavily on Web Dev Challenge. And I'm getting to the point, I've been writing, I call it a run book, where I'm writing the stuff that I do for every Web Dev Challenge and making sure that it starts to feel like a checklist, right? And eventually what that'll mean is that parts of that, the checklist that is, just go through this list and do these things, I can start to maybe hand that off. Maybe Aiden takes over some of it. Maybe I get a local producer, who knows, right? And all of that leads to me having more bandwidth to do new stuff, right? Because now Web Dev Challenge isn't new in the sense that I'm making it up as I go along, but it's more of like I know how to run this, so I can open up some mental capacity to work on something else that's new. And so what that means in my mind and the way that that's sort of grown with me as I try to build habits is that I've learned that for me consistency it's about recognizing the balance and the push and pull of novelty and bandwidth, because novelty burns more bandwidth than something that's happy. Like if you brush your teeth every day since you were old enough to hold a toothbrush, then you don't necessarily think about it. It doesn't take mental bandwidth. I just know, like, all right, I'm going to bed. I go brush my teeth. I didn't burn any energy. Like, I'm not using willpower for that. It's just a thing that I do, right? There's no extra effort applied. But for something that I'm trying to do that's new, like recently, I had been using a water pick, right? And it's a flosser. But then my dentist told me that in addition to the water flosser, a few times a week, you should still use regular floss. And I was like, this sounds like you're just trying to, it sounds like you're just trying to find something to be unhappy about, but whatever. So now I've had to, consciously remind myself to actually floss. Like I have to get the floss out and like set it out so that I look at it, those sorts of things. And that requires mental energy and willpower. I have to remember to do it. So the more of a habit something is, the less willpower it requires to do. And knowing that and knowing what my capacity is, like just through, almost 40 years of experience being myself, I've started to figure out how I can slot in new stuff and whether that requires pulling off something else. Like I know that if I were to say take on a new series, like maybe that new series is, I don't know, like a full-blown like trivia game show, I couldn't do that right now. It wouldn't work. I would have to either shut down Web Dev Challenge to focus on the trivia show, or I would have to wait on the trivia show until Web Dev Challenge is a little more of a, like, running a little more automated, right? So knowing that about myself, I don't give a lot of mental energy to the trivia show because I want to do one. I've got this whole idea about how I would riff on trivia and hot ones and all that good stuff. But I can't focus on that yet because it would distract too much. It would probably lead to my routines breaking down and stuff not working anymore. So that's the longest answer of all time to a simple question about consistency. But I do think it's very important to recognize that consistency isn't just like putting a sticky note on the bathroom mirror that says do thing. You have to remember that like doing a thing requires space and willpower and energy and focus. And so you have to make sure that in choosing to be consistent, you're considering all of that and carving out the ability to give it the focus and the attention and the care. Let's take a look. Can I up the volume, please? Am I low right now? How's my volume over here? Looks like it's good. Let me know if I'm low, but I should be within bounds here. just looking at my meters. So yeah, let me know if it's not coming through. A few more good questions in here. Man, that makes me feel so good. I'm glad that you're enjoying the Web Dev Challenge. That show is one of those things that I've been like. It's not even where I want it to be, right? I have ideas for how we can go even further with it, and you know, I'm talking. Hopefully, we'll see. Maybe next year is the year that I get the partners on board that want to do the full version. But Web Dev Challenge is actually the second iteration of an idea that I've been trying to get somebody on board with since 2019. And it's a labor of love. We're pushing. We're gonna get there. Eventually, we'll get the full version of it. And when that day comes, I'm gonna be the happiest kid around. But yeah, it really does mean a lot to me that people are enjoying the show and that people are, you know, like the number of comments that we get, how positive the comments are, the fact that people are getting involved in the hackathons, which there is a hackathon going right now. Let me drop a link to that if you want to get involved. We've got an open challenge. You can use that challenge to build your own version of an app, 30 minutes to plan, 4 hours to build, and you can win. Like we've got the first 5 people to submit get Keychron keyboards. We've got like $150 in like desk goodies from either Drop, Cocoon, or Ugmonk. You get some limited edition, like we've got a movie poster for this episode, and so you win one of those posters. We've got swag from the sponsors, like all sorts of good stuff. So a good chance to meet some folks, get into the Discord, and the links are all in this this sub link here. Over here, there it is. This link here. All the details are in there. But get in there. You can meet the devs from like Clerk and Convex are hanging out in the builder chat channel on my Discord to answer your questions. There's people posting ideas. There's people sharing the work they're doing already. Like lots of cool stuff going on. So make sure you you know, if you're feeling it, get in there and do something. Let's see how to get remote jobs. Remote jobs are tricky because most jobs now are advertised as remote, but a lot of them, what they mean by remote is like remote my time zone, which can be tricky. Also, if a job is hybrid, where like half the office is remote, half the office works in an office, that's extremely complicated. But in terms of getting a remote job, I would say getting a remote job works very similarly to getting an in-person job, in the sense that you've got to get through the interview process and you've got to get through all of the screenings that they do. And in order to do that, you have to put the right amount of work out that shows that you do what they want, right? And I think the challenge with this is that it assumes a certain amount of either existing experience that you can share or free time so that you can generate work that shows what you want to be. Obviously, not all of us have those things, and so there's some complexity here in terms of like access, and there's some assumptions about privilege and things like that. The challenge right now is that because the market is so competitive, it's not enough to just send resumes. It's going to be important to send out more signal if you want to get a response, because recruiters are getting 1,000 applications for any given job, and they're going to scan very, very, very fast. And so your resume might be one of the ones that's in the right order in the stack that they decide to give you an interview. But the unfortunate fact of the matter is after they've scanned 50 resumes, they're going to start just tossing things out unless it catches their eye. And so the way to catch their eye is, have work that shows you doing what they do. Have a really good cover letter. If you're not a strong writer, then rely on the work more than the cover letter. And also, like, we don't know that people are reading the cover letters, and if they're using an AI screener on their applications, you might never get to a human in the first place. So try not to take it personally. Know that it's a numbers game. Be persistent. Send out a lot, and make sure that you're, if you're more than 2/3 of the way qualified, apply, because a lot of times the job descriptions are sort of a buzzword salad. It's not actually the requirements of the job. It's just stuff that they have in other job descriptions. So, you don't apply if you don't have any of the qualifications. But if you're about 2/3 of the way there, I would say apply. And then you're going to find out in the initial interview very quickly what the actual requirements of the job are. Because again, job descriptions are often not written by the team that is hiring. They're often written by recruiters who copy pasted from other job descriptions. And we know that a software engineering job is not the same, even in the same company. Like between teams, you do very different stuff. So it's important to not take, like, the job description is going to give you directionals. Like if you apply to a job that's on internal tools, you know what internal tooling is. And then if you look at the job description itself and it's talking about having years in distributed database systems, it's kind of like, well, that's probably not what internal tooling is. Like maybe I'll just apply anyways. So that's one of the ongoing challenges here is try to just keep putting stuff out there. Like as much stuff as you can put out there, work, connections, community, friends, family, whatever you can do to get more bandwidth, more signal out there in a very noisy field, the more chances you have of getting that interview. And once you get the interview, there's a whole bunch of stuff you need to know about that, but I'm not a great person to talk to about interviewing because I just haven't done it in such a long time. So, there are people out there who are much better at talking about this, like Danny Thompson. You can talk to like the Job Father is a recruiter who talks a lot about like what will get you through recruiter screens. There's some good stuff out there for sure. How can we create a business card printing website using WordPress? And that's a great question. I think if you want to build a business card printing website, any of those things, like WordPress, would allow you to accept the input for what goes on the business card. If you want to build like a full-blown business card designer, it's going to be custom. Like WordPress, as far as I know, doesn't supply like a full-blown like editor. This is such a nuanced area. So if you wanted to provide templates and say, if you want to use this template, fill out this form and we'll print your details in this template on this business card, WordPress is great for that. And how you would do that is you would need the form. The form would need to submit to either your email where you do the work manually to lay out the cards and then print them, or you would need whatever your back-end system is that takes the submissions and turns them into card printing orders. But the mechanics of it don't really rely on WordPress so much as they rely on just standard web stuff. There's inputs from the users, there's where those inputs are sent once they submit the form, and then there's anything that happens on the back end, either manually or automatically, to turn the form input into a business card. So your work then is figuring out, based on what your level of comfort is with each of those steps in the chain, how you want to manage that. Because one way that you could do it, for example, is you could use a free form tool like Google Forms, or you could get some of the other, like I'm forgetting the name of the other form, like Form Spring, something like that. Any of those tools that'll let you build a form, you could have and some of those will also allow you to take payment, or you could, put a Stripe button, and that Stripe button redirects to the form page, and the form page sends to your email, and then when you get the email, you work with a printer to fulfill the order, right? Like lots of ways that you could, that's the manual way, that would be like the hard version. And then you can, as your skill level, goes up, because I don't know what you're comfortable with or not, you can automate some of that. You could have the form submit to something that has webhooks, and that webhook could generate the order, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of ways to make this stuff work. It just is very much dependent on what you want to build versus what you want to be able to plug together off the shelf with no code at all. But yeah, no code at all would be get a WordPress landing page, embed a form, use one of the forms that has an integration with payment system, and have that email come to you so that somebody can take that email and turn it into a printing order. That would be the easiest way. And then as you get into code, you can automate or augment as much of that as you want. You spent 3 months building a review website. Don't know if it'll make you money. Is it 3 months wasted? My general stance on doing things is that you're never wasting time if you're learning. And so if you're building something that's teaching you how to build better websites, that is experience that's going to pay you dividends in the future, right? The only way to really waste time is to do nothing. And the indecision that paralyzes us and leaves us like not taking any action, that's wasted time. But if you make a choice and you pursue that choice, that's information. And information isn't wasted time. Information is some form of progress, right? There are more effective and less effective ways to make progress, but doing anything that allows you to expand or broaden your perspective is useful. Is it the most useful thing? I don't know, maybe not, but it's better than doing nothing. And so in the absence of a better idea, doing something is better than doing nothing. And you know, if you did this website and it's not making money, is that because, like, then you get to learn something new? Was it because the idea wasn't the right idea? Is it because people couldn't figure out how to use it? Is it because you didn't market it, nobody knew it existed? Is it because, you know, you entered into a saturated vertical and there were already too many places to leave reviews? So many different reasons why something can fail. And all of those are information that help you on your next one. Like it can help you make a better decision about what to build or not to build. It can help you decide what to focus on. Like if it's marketing, maybe you got to learn how to tell people about stuff because you build good stuff, but then nobody knows it exists. So that's a skill you got to go build. Lots of reasons to do, you know, a lot of information to be gathered, even if the project is technically what you would classify as a failure. But yeah, the only real failure is standing still. What do you think about integrating payment methods without a back end, using some API, just a front end, and Firebase data? Lemon Squeezy is a good option, but I mean, Lemon Squeezy is great. You can use Lemon Squeezy. It is completely fine. They handle the payment so that you don't have to worry about it being secure. And they just got picked up by Stripe, which is a pretty strong vote of confidence for their security. Stripe itself has some embeddable buttons so that you can make something for sale on your site without having to build any backends. You know, you have a lot of options for no backend payment integration. And my tendency is to, like, I start with Stripe and then I'll kind of look at, am I doing like actual e-commerce? If I'm doing actual e-commerce, I'm going to look at something like Shopify. If I wanted to do something that's, I don't know, like exactly what Patreon offers, then I'm probably going to look into what Patreon's doing. Or if I'm looking for exactly what Lemon Squeezy is doing, or some of those other tools, then I'm going to use those feature sets. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to accept money online that don't require you to build a backend. All of them either have APIs and or embed options so that you can just put it into any front end and it'll work and it's secure and it's fine. Let's see. Okay, so this is something I've been thinking about is so the Web Dev Challenge, I want to make sure that I'm like, how to do casting on it has been a question that I've been kind of trying to answer. And there's a part of me that wants to just do like open casting calls where somebody can, you know, send me a video and show me something you built on video, right? Like kind of do the demo, because that's one of the big parts of the show. And if you do that, then I'll go through and choose people who are good on camera and look like they can do the job. And, we'll bring some folks on who need a platform. And I balance that with folks like, I'm going to bring on bigger names. I'm trying to get folks that people have heard of so that they can see what it looks like when somebody that they've, looked up to for a while, like how do they solve one of these problems? And I think all of that is really interesting. But there's some restrictions that I have right now just due to cost. For example, I can't currently afford to bring anybody in from outside of North America just because the travel costs get too high. And if I brought somebody in from, Europe, it wouldn't just be like right now, if somebody comes in from North America, we fly them in the night before filming. I cook dinner at my house and then we film all day and do a dinner, and then like everybody goes home the next day. If we brought in somebody from Europe, I'm on the West Coast, so we would almost certainly need to give them a couple days to recover because you don't want to film while you're jet lagged. And the same if we brought somebody in from like Asia. If you come all this way, you're going to need a couple days to recover from your jet lag, which turns it into like a 5-6 day trip, and then it starts getting into like, can you really take that much time off work? And then it's okay. So now I need to factor in like I should probably be, like I need to basically treat this like how do I make this paid time off for somebody, and all like lots of reasons that make this really really complicated, and tripling the price of air travel and all that kind of stuff gets a little tough to manage, but it's on my list of problems I want to solve. However, for people in North America, I am definitely trying to figure out a good way to source folks that aren't just like people I know. So if you've got ideas, I'm all ears. Thank you, Vinny, for the reminder. Yes, if you are watching on YouTube, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and whatever, like share it with some friends. Like do the things that tell YouTube that you're enjoying yourself, so that they tell more people that I exist. Is Clerk really a good option? So, I mean, this is the thing, Nick. When you are looking at where you spend your time, how many hours do you have available for development in a given month, and what are the things that you feel really comfortable with? Like if you've built auth 1,000 times before and you feel really comfortable with it, then whatever, roll your own auth. It doesn't matter. But $100 a month for auth versus, and like how much do you charge per hour if you're a contractor? Because like my hourly rate is more than $100 an hour. And so for me, if I'm spending more than an hour working on the auth, Clerk is a deal. And from the standpoint of like what I want to build are features, then it's hard for me to justify working on stuff that's not a feature. And the stuff that like auth is one of those things that's deceptively, it starts simple and then it just gets so hard so fast, because giving somebody a username login, fine. Giving an OAuth 2 flow, fine. Both are very simple, right? But then you get into, all right, a lost password recovery flow. So now it's not just like, okay, so a password recovery is fine, but like, how do you actually start that flow? Well, you got to send an email. Now you need an email delivery service. So are you going to use something like Resend, or are you trying to roll that yourself too, right? And at which point now you've got like transactional email, so you got to figure that out. Then you're trying to figure out how do you do, say, account merging. If somebody logs in with their password and email, and then they log in with their GitHub account, did they just create 2 users? Or are you going to somehow like merge those together and make sure that they're logged in as themselves? That's really difficult. Do you plan on making this something that's for sale? And if it's for sale, how are you going to implement multi-factor auth? Are you going to get a Twilio account set up and manage all of that? Like, this stuff gets really, really complicated in a big hurry. And when you start getting into real feature sets, I know how much time I would spend building it myself. So to me, working with something like Clerk until the website is making so much money that I could hire a specialist, and it like saves money to pay the specialist a full-time salary versus paying a service like Clerk, which at $100 a month, you would need to get into some pretty serious enterprise level Clerk before it justifies even a part-time developer, right? So to me, it gets pretty difficult to justify most of this stuff. And like, you can do production Clerk without some of those features. If you don't, like, you can use passkeys instead of multi-factor auth, whatever it is, right? Like, you can make some decisions to keep it free if you so choose. And you know, once you get into getting paid for your services, then you can decide whether or not it's worth it to add the extra. So that's kind of where I'm at, right? That's sort of where I've landed on this stuff, because yes, it is expensive on its surface until you start looking at like how much your time costs and what the opportunity cost is of building that instead of building features. Let's see, I don't have a degree at all, got decent experience, stuck with an interview coding questions. So here's the major challenge. Interviewing and being a web developer are not the same thing. It's two completely different skill sets. So there are whole courses that you can take. Like Emma Bostian has a whole course. I don't think it's very expensive, maybe like $30, on the coding interview, right? How to do a coding interview. There's LeetCode, which has a free and a paid option to just run algorithmic code, like stuff that you'll never need except in a coding interview. That's basically what LeetCode is. And you will run those like drills. And then hopefully when you get into your next coding interview, they're going to show you one of the LeetCode drills that you've already done, and then you're going to ace it, and they'll be like, wow, look how smart this person is. And it will have done absolutely nothing to give anybody any confidence about your ability to actually do the job. So that's, unfortunately, that is like a fundamentally broken part of our industry, is that coding interviews are a skill that is not related to your job, but that you still need to learn if you want to get a job. And yeah, like Nick said, you just got to practice, and it sucks. Master of Fine Arts. I know, it's funny. You can always tell like what somebody's background is based on what they immediately interpret an acronym to mean. Like, I remember when I first became a VP, I was in meetings where they were doing metrics and stuff, and they would talk about stuff that I knew, like OKRs. I knew that one. But then they started talking about ICPs, and I was like, why are we talking about the Insane Clown Posse right now? It's like manager or like product speak for ideal customer profile, which I'd never heard before, but I definitely knew the Insane Clown Posse. So help here directly with code is harder. I would say if you want to get into the Discord, I have a Discord where it's much easier to share like a gist and a question. But depending on what you're asking, it also might not be the best place to ask, just because you'll have a larger audience on something like Stack Overflow, or if it's with a specific tool, those tools usually have Discords where there are experts ready to answer your question. You'll have a higher concentration of them there. But yeah, feel free to jump in the Discord, and we can always do our best. I don't know anything about Eartho as an auth library, so I won't comment on it. All right, so let's do a little code. Okay, let's jump into some coding and see how far I can get on this project. So here's the current state of affairs on this site. So I have my my site set up here. The nav is still all placeholder, but I have a flow where you go to the home page and then you choose one of these series, and let's say we go into Learn with Jason. And I've got, like, here's season 1. And then if I want to go into season 2, click the button, and it takes me into season 2. I need to figure out why this isn't fitting on the screen. Like, that's weird that it's doing that, but it's fine. It's fine. So then we've got all of these here, right? These are did you know that I did 72 episodes of Learn with Jason in 2019? Because I didn't until I imported this data, and that kind of blows my mind. But then we also have, like, in here, if we look at, like, here's one of these episodes. So we've got the episode itself. This is pulling from YouTube. And then we've got description, all those good things. We've got related episodes, which I need to fix because this is blown off the screen. And then you can click through into the guest. The guest now has a profile. We got that working last time. And you get who they are. There's an optional ability to add a bio. And then you can see other episodes that they've been a part of. And then we also have, I already show this where we've got like a drop down for all this. Okay, so then you can sign in. And once you get signed in, you can go to your profile. And this is mine. And so it shows here that I have a subscription. So I can click through to my subscription and it shows what I'm doing. I actually, you have to have webhooks running in dev mode, which I didn't when I changed this. So it shows me in the wrong, or it shows me in this plan and my profile doesn't show it because the WebKit wasn't working. And then I have the ability to, I can do a bio, I can do my links and all of this. And I got this set up so that I can do things such as something like this. And update. All right, so now this is all being updated. But then here's the cool part. When I go out to my public profile, this is going to look wacky, by the way, because I haven't fixed it and I'm in every episode of everything. But look, we've got the bio showing up, we've got the links showing up, and so I'm able to do all this stuff, and it shows that I'm a supporter of the show, right? So that is kind of the core flow that I'm after, and I'm really excited about how close this feels to being done. So it's going to need, it's going to need some work. We're going to have to clean a lot of stuff up here. But in general, this is feeling closer and closer to something that is actually usable here, right? So feeling excited about that. So that then is kind of where we're at. And then the other piece is, let's see, this one. Yeah, so this one plays out of mux. And let me actually, let's go over into Sanity here and let's see if I can, and let's just kind of look through how this works in the back end. So I have my stuff here. Here's my my profile. You can see that when I updated it on my back end, it updated in Sanity. It updates here. We've got the Clerk user ID hooked up. And each of these is kind of a similar setup. So if we go and look in Jason Ball, we pulled in his photo. It doesn't have a bio, but we have the Twitter. We have a Clerk user ID. Good, right? So all that works. And it means that on the front end, we have access to these things. Then in the series, when we go into one of the series, we have details about the series itself. So we've got the image, we've got a description, and then we can go into one of the seasons. So if we click into this season here, we've got a description of the season itself. We say what year it was released. Then this is one of the things I'm going to talk to Knut about tomorrow is like I have to hook the series up twice. Like I have to hook the series to the collection and then the collection to the series, or else we lose things like this preview saying what series it's connected to. That breaks. And then in here, we have all of our episodes. And so we can kind of go through the list here, find the one that we're looking for. We can change the order of them if we want, but I have them in here by date order, so that's going to stay. And then if we want to add another one, we can click this button, we can hit create, and it brings up the episode creation. So we've got then all the buttons here to actually set up one of the episodes. I'm going to scrap this one and come back here, and we'll just get rid of that. We don't need it. But then we can look into one of these and see that it's got, the people are connected to it. If I click into Tara, I can see her account. And all of these pieces are the ones that I need to run the website. And imported all of this, which I'm very excited about, from the existing Sanity database. So this is all very cool. And then check this out too. See how there's no thumbnail, but out on the website, there's a thumbnail. This is very exciting to me. I didn't know that this worked, but in the code here, I actually have, let's go into the episode. No, it's going to be in the collection slug here. Up top here, when I'm going for an image, oh, is it in the episode preview? Hold on. Here it is. So I check to see if a thumbnail's been set. If the thumbnail hasn't been set, I check for a YouTube ID. And you can actually get a YouTube ID or a YouTube thumbnail just straight through Cloudinary by passing in, like I'm using the Cloudinary SDK straight up. And if you pass in a YouTube ID and say type YouTube, it'll just grab the dang thumbnail for you, which is great because otherwise you have to like build URLs or just know what they are, or worst case, like scrape them. All very, very silly. So yeah, lots of stuff going on in there. What are the best effective job hunting platforms? I don't actually know. So I don't know where people are looking for jobs. Where I look is community stuff, but I'm not looking for me. So I'm not sure where people are going. LinkedIn tends to be a good place. Like I always rely on network, right? So I'm looking for people I know talking about jobs, and then I will show those jobs to people that, like I'll put them in my Discord, for example, if somebody I know is hiring. That being said, like in terms of actually discovering jobs, I have no idea. I think LinkedIn is a decent spot to look, but Benny Kunchi has a site called Diversify Tech that lists a bunch of jobs, and she vets those companies, so that's a good place to look. Yeah, lots of good spots. What JavaScript frameworks are worth learning that have a future? Anything that's in production, right? So like React obviously has a ton of stuff in production. Even if it loses all favor today and everybody decides they're not going to write React anymore, there will be React code in production for a long time, just like there's Angular code in production from the Angular 1 days that needs maintenance and everything. Like the trade-off is always going to be between whether you are working on the currently trendy framework or on the previously trendy framework. Because you can find work right now working on Ember, on Backbone, on Django, on any of the PHP frameworks, on jQuery, on React, on Vue, on you know what I mean. Like there's like most of these frameworks are in production. Svelte is in production at the New York Times. So like any of the frameworks is worth learning in the sense of it's in use. If you're looking for just strict popularity, straight JavaScript, because like people talk a bunch of stuff about like how dominant React is, but if you look at the stats, JavaScript is in use on jQuery specifically is in use on like 75% of websites, something around there, like in that vicinity, whereas React is on like 4% of websites. So yes, React is very prevalent. 4% of websites is a ton of websites, but straight JavaScript is on far more, right? And if you learn straight JavaScript, you're also going to know most of how React works, and then you're just learning its idiosyncrasies as opposed to like learning the whole framework. And similarly, if you know straight JavaScript, you are also pretty close to also knowing Solid and Svelte and Vue and Quick and Redwood and all of the JavaScript frameworks, because most of them are mostly JavaScript. Like very few are wholesale altering the language. I think the most notable example would be something like Angular that introduces non-standard stuff like decorators. But even that is still just JavaScript. It's just a part of JavaScript that isn't widely adopted. So that's probably not a very helpful answer, but the fact of the matter is like learning is learning, and it will make you useful. And if you think about why something works and not just how it works, that makes you more like that means you're actually learning as opposed to just sort of memorizing. And that'll make your knowledge applicable to other things because you'll see the patterns that that are shared between like how Solid and React use hooks or something, right? Like those patterns all sort of line up and they start to feel pretty similar after a while. Am I adding new features to this site? Yes, that is the plan. Astro and Solid is good. Alpine JS is good. Have I had the chance to look into Cursor? I haven't. Okay, so here's my like maybe Luddite take on this. I keep trying the code AI stuff, and it keeps feeling like it's just in my way. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I'm not taking the time to like really give it a chance, but I feel like it is annoying more than it's helpful. And so I haven't seen, I don't know, maybe it's like learning Vim. Like if you put the time into it, you become more productive, but like I just feel like I'm slower and like more irritated when I work with an AI coding thing. So I just don't. I also like there's also like professional reasons for me not to use it. Like I'm teaching, and so a lot of times when I'm here, if we're trying to explain something and like code is being spit out as I'm trying to explain different code, that can be distracting and confusing. So there are a lot of reasons that I am sort of disincentivized from using it as well, and that is probably not a like normal state of affairs. Like most developers probably don't have those considerations of like other people are watching me to learn, and so that's like I don't know. I would say I'm probably not the right person to talk to about the AI stuff because I think it's interesting, and I don't think it's bad, but it's also not. So far, I have not been convinced that it's for me yet. Comprehensive Sanity plus Astro tutorial. Okay, yeah, we can probably make that happen. LinkedIn conferences and Hacker News. Yeah, that's a good spot. What's up, Michael? How you doing? Many frameworks are very similar. There's kind of a convergence right now on a lot of ideas. Actually, we just had Ryan Carniato from Solid on Learn with Jason last Thursday, and on the show, one of the things we talked about was that it felt for a while like we were sort of everybody was going their own way, coming up with their own approaches. But we started to converge on ideas. Like people seem to like the idea of hooks. People seem to like the idea of fine-grained reactivity. So almost all of the frameworks now are using fine-grained reactivity except for React. And almost all of the frameworks now have some version of hooks. And they're all sort of starting to converge on this idea of server actions, whether that is the React server components way or whether it's the way that like Solid and some of the other frameworks are doing it. The thought processes, the patterns are sort of converging and becoming the same with minor implementation details. So the more you learn about any of these frameworks, the more you'll start to see the patterns of like who borrowed what ideas from where. And if you follow Ryan Carniato, you'll actually hear the provenance because he knows. Like he'll say, "Oh yeah, this pattern we adopted, and it comes from." He'll like throw it all the way back to like Backbone or MooTools or something where it was first initially conceived of, and then kind of trace it through all the frameworks that have adopted, which is really interesting. It's kind of cool to know the history like that. But you don't need to know that history. You just need to know that like all of these frameworks are borrowing ideas from each other, and they're all becoming relatively similar with like most of what they do is the same, and then they have their sort of differentiators in like Svelte and its heavy focus on animation, and Vue and the single file components, and Astro and the sort of like no client JS by default. And each of them has its own approach, and that leads to its own strengths. The trade-offs are always there. But again, the more you learn, the more you start to see the way that these things line up. How am I handling image sizing for this site? Is it all Cloudinary? It is a combination of Cloudinary and Unpick. So on this one, I'm using Unpick, and then I have the Cloudinary utils. These are all just generating Cloudinary URLs. And so the reason that I use Unpick is that once I generate my Cloudinary URL, I'm able to drop it into this Unpick element. And what this will do is actually, oh, you know what I should do also? Watch, this is cool. We can turn on the placeholder, but so I pass in a single URL and it's aware that it's Cloudinary because Unpick is designed to pick up like Cloudinary and most CDNs, like most image CDNs, it is aware of, like Imagix and so on. And then I pass in an alt, and then I can give it a width and a height. And Unpick under the hood will do things like set the image loading priority. It can build out a placeholder for me, which I'll show you right now. It can do like the source sets for responsive images. All of that just gets handled for me, and I don't have to actually build it out. So let's, yeah, okay. This is going to be hard to do without throttling, so let me throttle. Okay, so reloading, and you see this? That just came out of Unpick without me having to do anything because it's dope. So that way you get, like, on a large image, you get placeholders that are sort of like blurred versions of the images that then come in. You can also turn it into like dominant color so that it's like a plain color. Lots of ways that you can solve those problems, but ultimately, it's just nice. And then if we look under the hood at how these actually work, you can see that we got, let's edit as HTML. And so under the hood here, we have our sizes. So that's for responsive images. We have the style here. This is the blur hash. So the object fit cover is just so that the image doesn't distort. The background image, though, this is the blurred version that we saw. And so you can see how small that is. So it's a nice little bonus there that we don't have to deal with it. And then we got our source set. And so you can see that one image got turned into 1, 2, 3 different sizes that we can use. And then there's the fallback to the original one, as well as some, these are just dev mode only things. These go away in a production Astro site. So that's like how that works. And from my standpoint, I'm generating a URL, which if we look in the Cloudinary utils, when I create an image URL, I've got my base transformation, so I always set quality and format to auto because that just tends to make the images much smaller and it's not really notable, especially the format thing because it uses a thing called, what's it called, content negotiation, right? Yes. And that way, if I can say, send me a JPEG, but the format's auto, and then in Arc, Arc can handle WebP. So it'll send a WebP instead, and that WebP will be like 10% of the size of a PNG or like 50% of the size of a JPEG. Then I use this cloudinary.url. I drop in the public ID of the image, which is, in my case, stored in Sanity. And then I drop in my base transformation, and I allow for custom transformations, but I'm not actually using them. So if you look at this episode preview, for example, I'm just saying, oh, I am using them. So I'm saying, give me the image or the Cloudinary URL for this episode's public ID, and then I size it to 340. I set the aspect ratio and tell it to crop for fill, and then this does the rest, right? So it's cool. It's very helpful. Not a lot of work, and it means that my image usage is so much lower than it used to be when I was trying to like manually optimize all my images. Let's see. Cycle of tutorial hell. Here advice like build projects, but I always start a project, don't know where to go. My advice is that the hardest thing about any project is finishing it. So practice finishing. And if they feel too big to finish, scope them down. And, instead of building a full app, build an experience. Like build a really good form submission experience as opposed to a full-blown app where that form submission experience would live. Maybe you build a really good image gallery, a really good, login experience. Like things like that help you get through learning and give you something publishable, but they're not intended to be like full-blown businesses. I think this is a big challenge that a lot of folks have, is that when they start building apps, they're thinking of them as like, I'm going to release this and people are going to use this. And then in order to make it usable, you got to handle all these edge cases, which then lead to like the scope gets out of control, it gets discouraging, you get busy. And then even if you do finish it and it doesn't get a huge amount of usership, because building a business is hard, and it's not just like if you build it, they will come. You got to go promote it. You got to like support your users. You got to do all this stuff, right? So then it's discouraging because you built this whole thing and nobody's using it. So all of that, I would say, is a good incentive to scope down, build smaller things that are there to demonstrate, not to be fully functional. And just note what's not functional. This login form doesn't actually log into anything. It's just to show you how a really good login form can go. And when you click the button, it's going to take you to a dashboard. It's not actually going to authenticate you at all. Or the same with if I'm doing an image gallery or something, we don't have to build the ability for people to upload their own images, because that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is showing how a really good image gallery can work. That I think is the important thing, is like remove unnecessary bits of what you're trying to demonstrate and focus down on like, I'm trying to get better at X. What's the stuff that actually makes me better at X, and eliminate or placeholder the rest, so that you don't have to make every project the biggest project you've ever built. Why not using Strappy? No reason other than I'm more familiar with Sanity. Strappy's good. I like it. Beginner in React, you want to develop a website, e-commerce system such as a hospital. Yeah, I mean, those are the sorts of things that you build by inches. You don't go from like day one to building a full-blown e-commerce site. I think you do a little, like you do little bits that all stack, right? If you are looking to build an e-commerce site, start by building out a way to display products, right? Like get a JSON array of product data, and how do you get that onto a page, right? Once you get that, then take it one step further. Can you build a cart flyout, right? And can you make it look really good and feel kind of good to use? Then what's the next step? Well, the next step is being able to add things to the cart and like edit the cart so that you can update quantities and remove items and calculate subtotals, right? All of this, each one of these is a really, really good learning exercise that's also fairly complicated, right? And so as you build each of these pieces, you're going to learn a core skill that you can then use in other parts of your work. But by doing it in bite-sized chunks, like my first step is take an array of data and put it on a screen. That's scoped down enough that it doesn't feel discouraging when you're not sure how to build a cart and have that cart submit and accept payment and send transactional email receipts. And like there's a lot, like each one of those things is its own complicated project. So you kind of want to think about it like laying bricks. Each skill that you build is a brick that lays a foundation for you to go have a big professional career. But don't be discouraged if you can't do it all at once. It's about like this is a long career with a lot of skill involved. So you have to learn each of those things. And the closer you can get to learning them kind of one at a time, the less overwhelming and magical all of this stuff feels. How does something like image work with responsive images? So you've got a particular part of an image you want to show a part of that you would normally use object position for. So what you can do with, like if you want to do art direction, for example, let me actually just drop a link to Unpick in here. So this is Unpick. It's cool. And let me pull your question back up here. So if you want to do like art direction, for example, let's go into Astro. Then you've got the source option where you can do actual. Where are the examples? Okay, so here we go. So with examples, you've got the ability to do like, whether it's responsive or fixed or et cetera, et cetera. And then here you can start to do, this is like editable. So you can kind of see how it's resizing. And then down here in art direction, you can choose which parts get shown in the image. So like this is a source, for example. And so this is all kind of how you get to choose what you're going to do with this stuff. And then based on how big one of these images is, can I resize this and get the, I guess it doesn't work that way. But so each of these is sort of like art directed a different way. It's a different crop of the image, which you then control so that you can sort of decide like, oh, this is the part of the image that's most important. So on huge screens, I want the full thing. And then when we get to a tablet size, I want to split it and only show the right half. You just control that with sources. So you use the picture and source element. But that's all, it works the same way in Unpick. And it all ends up being, it ends up being like very semantic HTML, which is another reason why I like it. And in something like Astro, it doesn't have any, there's no JavaScript required to run it, which is also really nice. How much is it costing me per month? It's nothing. I'm using Cloudinary's free plan. I guess they bumped me up to like a community creator plan recently, but I was not clearing the free plan credits every month. And I run, like Learn with Jason runs off this, Jason.energy runs off this, most of my demos run off this. And there are ways that you can be irresponsible with your Cloudinary credits. Like they've got AI and stuff where you can automatically tag images and like classify, like dog, counter, kitchen, basketball, whatever. If you use those, you'll burn through your free credits pretty dang fast. But I don't, and unless I'm doing a demo or something. And so that is, yeah, you just don't need to. Oh, you know what I just realized? I have a whole tutorial on this on the Cloudinary. Let me see if I can find this. So here, this is a whole tutorial that I did on how images work in Astro with Unpick using Cloudinary. So if you want to see how this works, just dive in here. I guess cut the T equals 4S so that you don't start 4 seconds in. But this is a whole, like in here, I actually get into, we like build out a whole thing, and the Vinnies will be stoked because like there's API keys that almost get leaked. But it's a full demo of like how you would get an image. Let's see if we can get, yeah, you get the different sizes and all that stuff. So it kind of just shows how all this stuff works. It's hopefully useful to you. You should go and watch it. What else? What else we got here? Oh boy. Operator Mono, yes. Capuchin, I don't know that one. What's Capuchin? No, this is, I'm using the Night Owl theme. Sarah Drasner put it together. I love it with all of my heart. I put this together. Is it here now? Hold on, we're gonna find out if I updated this yet. I did, haha. Okay, so I have a uses page that has all of the stuff that I use. So this one specifically is, you can see in the software, all the different stuff that I use, but then I have a full setup with like what's on my desk, the software, what I use for streaming, and a bunch of books that I think are really good. I was just talking about this book today, actually. So yeah, lots of stuff in there if you are so inclined to dig into that. Let's see. Love the web. Thanks, Venom Raiders. I appreciate that. You're just wondering, am I full stack or front end? What stack am I using? So full stack is one of those things that I think it means something different depending on what you're talking about and who you're talking to. So here's what I'll say. I have spent a ton of time working with like databases and node servers and PHP servers back in the day. However, I don't know, like if I got hired as a backend dev, I would have a lot of things to either brush up on or learn. So full stack, like yes, in the sense that I can build whole apps, like my site out here. This is full of like we've got a bunch of Sanity's a backend, so there's a bunch of backend configuration stuff that I'm doing to make this work. I've got I was doing the database in Astro before I backed away from that. I've got like here's a giant ass migration script that I'm writing to bring data from one version of Sanity into another, and all of that. Oh, this actually is sample data, so I don't need to scroll through that. But like all of this is, I think, backend, right? Feels backend, like data migrations and stuff. But who knows? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's all front end now, and I think that's why this stuff is tricky. And then I've got a bunch of stuff as well, like Stripe webhooks, which I think is a fairly back end thing, handling and creating checkout sessions, dealing with like pulling and formatting data that feels back end, but who knows? Maybe it's not. It depends on whether or not you're trying to judge me. But then, even the front end stuff though starts to get fairly complex. So if you look up here, we are doing things like we're pulling in somebody's like user. So we're doing auth. We are handling form submissions, and those form submissions are being sent to Sanity. So that's like sending mutations and post requests, right? Then we are loading somebody's Stripe data and determining whether or not they have an active subscription. We are figuring out whether or not somebody has an active newsletter subscription. Is that backend? Feels like backend. Maybe it's not. So it really is, again, just the sort of thing that I would say depends on your perspective. But I guess to take a far step back, most people I think would describe me as a full stack dev. I think in terms of like the job market. Aside from tutorials and courses that teach you the fundamentals, practice copying pieces from existing sites and systems. Yeah, this like for real. This advice from Nick is really, really good. Most of my best lessons, I would say, were by reverse engineering how other people had solved problems. So figuring out, I used a website and I thought it felt really good to use. So I looked at how did they do that? How did they animate this stuff? What made these loading things feel so good to work with? And you might not be able to get like down into the very nitty gritty of how they did it because it might be minified code or something, but you can start to figure out like, okay, so they used GSAP, and the GSAP stuff, like maybe you can reverse engineer it, but at least it gives you a thread to tug at, and then I can go try to recreate that animation on my own. And my code pen is littered with little ideas that somebody did a thing and I'm riffing on it. I'm trying to figure out how to make it work. My early career was completely full of me just wholesale rebuilding certain types of pages or interactions because I wanted to understand how they worked. I spent a ton of time, for example, like just reading React source code. Do you remember Flux? Like it was sort of a pre-Redux thing. I like re-implemented that from scratch because I couldn't get my head around how it worked. And so I went through their source code and I would kind of like, I'd write it. I skipped a bunch of, like I didn't write all the tests. I didn't write all the edge cases. I was just trying to get through like, how does data move through this thing so that I can understand what's actually happening? Similarly with like Redux and stuff, like tried to build my own lightweight versions of those. They weren't production ready. I never used them. They were just learning exercises to help me get my head around how does software like this actually work. Hugely, hugely beneficial and definitely worth the effort there, I think. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're inspired, and I hope as you're building stuff that you're sharing your progress, because that's a great way to help inspire more people. Highlights of previous work experience I'm not sure what you're asking. Let's see. What's my way to stay up to date with web technologies? I mean, I have a bit of a cheat code with Learn with Jason, but I also, I have a very curated Twitter. Like I try to mute a lot of things so that Twitter doesn't feel sad. And instead I'm trying to just follow people that I like. And the thing that bums me out about the decline of Twitter is that what made it valuable to me was I'm not close enough with a lot of people to be on the group chat, but we're still friends, right? And I want to be around them, and I want to hear their running commentary. What are they doing? What are they trying? And so being able to see somebody post that they got a new barbecue and they're figuring out how it works, or that they're building a new app and they're learning, they're super impressed by how whatever flow is implemented by that software. That's such a valuable thing to be able to sort of passively observe. And it's a bummer that it's gotten harder to passively observe, because I found myself now, a lot of people that I don't know that well, we're in group chats because it's a way for us to just sort of share things back and forth. I kind of feel like that's what Discord is becoming. But it sucks because it closes all of these things down. You can't go look at like what I'm retweeting or what Dan Abramov is talking about when we're in group chats. And, being not getting a chance to hear what somebody like Sarah Drasner or Cassidy Williams or, what we're using, what we're trying, what we're learning, that sucks. It's a huge loss. So I still try to use the social media networks as much as I can. I also am on a few newsletters, like I get Cassidy's newsletter. I get the bytes.dev newsletter from the lwj.dev team. That one's good for like high level. It kind of lets you know what's in the zeitgeist right now. So you'll learn about like some of it's like the drama, but a lot of it is like this library is causing waves, and so we can all go talk about it's like, okay, that library is getting enough attention that it made it into bytes. Let me go look at it, right? So I think that's it's hard though, because it's just so much of it is find a source that does it for you, I guess. And maybe, if you don't want to get on social media, you can watch Learn with Jason. Like, people bring new stuff onto my show all the time, and I'm always looking for new stuff to bring onto the show, so that hopefully it's a good source for people to learn what's new and upcoming and all that kind of stuff. And combine that with other folks that you respect their opinions, and see if they have a feed of somewhere that they talk about this stuff, because that's a good way to keep a finger on the pulse without having to be a researcher, and without having to like really dig into what's trending on GitHub, what's getting more installs or less installs or any of that. Like, other people will do that work for you, and if you can tap into their feed, then you don't have to become an expert on like reading JavaScript trends. You can just sort of observe what everybody's talking about and get a better sense. Oh, the streams notify late. That's I don't want to build a new thing. Let me preface it by what I'm about to say with that. I don't have the bandwidth for it now, but it could be interesting because we have the schedule data. There could be a way to use something like, it could just be like if this then that, or Zapier, or something more robust like ingest, to just schedule. Oh my goodness, you know what I could do? I bet Convex would do this. Like, whenever I schedule an episode, just schedule a function in Convex to say, at this time, send out emails or push notifications or whatever. Post an @ here in Discord, because I have noticed the Discord stuff is like those bots run a little bit late, and I think it's because they poll, and I imagine that they get bogged down, and so things get kind of pushed back and back in the queue. They're trying to avoid getting rate limited. So, you know, I can see how that happens. But if it was bespoke, I wouldn't need to worry about that because it's just my stream. And so I could pull the hell out of it. Like it wouldn't even necessarily need to pull because I know the schedule. So whenever I created something, I could quite literally say, all right, Convex, at this time, minus 2 minutes, post an @ here in the Discord that says Jason's going live. Man, I bet, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get my friend Joel, who uses ingest all the time, to teach me. I'm just going to write down a to-do. Go live notifications. And then someday I'll figure out how push notifications work and stuff so that people could, if they wanted to, like also say, yeah, but, and like notify my phone. I don't really want to do that. Maybe someday if somebody wants to volunteer. PG Lite, Postgres in the browser through Wasm. I have not heard of that, but that's dope. That'd be very cool to see. Sound like, because SQLite is great. Being able to do all the Postgres things in a SQLite fashion would also be great. I think one of the trade-offs of that though would be if it's not as simple, because like what makes SQLite special is that it generates an actual file for your database to operate off of, so that you can like commit your database into a GitHub repo and send it to somebody, and then when they fire up SQLite, they don't have to like clone or connect to a database. They're literally just using the same file, so that, and that's why, you know, SQLite has really high upside for dev and some complications when you get into production, which is like why companies like Terso exist, is to solve those complexities and make it actually work. That would be cool if Postgres can do the same thing. How did I get that nice table of contents sidebar with Astro and Markdown? Are you talking about which part are you talking about? Sorry. Like this sidebar? The source, you know, this one, because that's Markdown, or MDX more specifically. And the way that that one runs is all in here. Where specifically is a great question. I guess we'll see if I can. There's the blog, there's the actual blog post, and the content. So it's the blog layout is where all these pieces are. So in the blog layout, we pull in, yeah, it's all the stuff happening there. We've got the head, article, and then yeah, so this is kind of where all that happens. So I can toss a link to that in the chat so that you can go and check it out. But yeah, it's in the blog layout of the Learn with Jason site. Have I ever done a video describing my streaming setup? I've done it in the abstract sense where like I've done streams where I'm working on my streaming setup. I've never done like a tour, I don't think. I don't think I have. The closest I have is that uses page that lists everything. What's my take on design tokens, design systems, pros, cons? So I think the thing about design systems is that you always have a design system, right? Like it's that same old joke. You're either using a framework or you're building a framework, right? And the decision point moves based on how many people are involved in a project, how long-lived the project is, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm building a launch page for myself, and after that event is over, that launch page is getting archived, I'm not using anything. I'm gonna just let it rip with whatever toy I want to play with, not using design systems, not worried about anything, because it doesn't need maintenance and I'm the only one working on it, right? that's a pretty rare outcome. Usually something is gonna, maybe it doesn't need a lot of maintenance, but it's gonna live for longer than, a few days. And so then I'm maybe thinking about like, okay, I need to at least make sure that I'm gonna recognize what the heck I wrote when I come back into this later. And then if I'm gonna work with a team, I'm optimizing for what the team understands. Like for example, I would never willingly choose Tailwind for myself because I've been writing CSS for so long that Tailwind to me feels like putting training wheels on a bike, and I don't like it. However, if I was working on a team and the team were all Tailwind devs, I would choose Tailwind because I want everybody to be more effective, and I will take tech that I don't personally prefer over like forcing my preferences on somebody who is uncomfortable with a tool, because I'm all about maintenance. Like ultimately I don't want to be the one who gets stuck maintaining a tool, and if I force everybody to do it my way and they don't like working on it, ultimately it's going to become my problem, right? And especially like the more of my preferences that go in, the more I'm going to be the only person who understands how it works. So if I have my opinions, but then I also have this very strong avoidance of being the only person who can maintain a project. So typically I'm going to look at who's the team and what do they understand, and how do I maximize the shareability or the understandability among the team. So if we've got a company design system, we're using the company design system. If we are a small group and there's no design system, maybe we're going to reach for like Radix, the design system that comes from the WorkOS team. Or maybe we're going to look at ShadCN, or maybe we're going to look at, heck, maybe we go back to Bootstrap. Who cares, right? Like the point is that everybody gets it and they can maintain it. The specifics of the tech are significantly less important to me, because I don't think the tech is what makes a project good or bad. What makes a project good or bad is how much agency any member of the team has in fixing and adding features, right? So that's the big trade-offs that I'm measuring in my head, are kind of like who has to care, how much maintenance is this going to need, and what do the people who are maintaining it already know, and what are they comfortable with, so that if I'm on a team full of Vue developers, I'm not as good at Vue as I am at React, but I would very quickly choose Vue if everybody else was a Vue dev, because I want them to be able to maintain the site, right? And I can learn Vue. I've used it enough that I know how to build with it. I can go learn the specifics of like how to make it great, but they probably already know them because they're already Vue devs, right? So that's sort of how I think about it, is removing myself as a bottleneck, and especially not allowing my own strong opinions to create a bottleneck that didn't need to exist in the first place. Yeah, Chris Coyer talks about the great divide between, actually, why don't I open this, because this is a great one. It's on CSS Tricks. This is a great article, and I'm going to drop a link to it as well, because that will make sure it shows up in the notes in Discord and stuff. But like, this I think is interesting, where I don't think this is as true anymore. Where I would argue that now what the Great Divide is becoming is like, all of this feels like an expected job. I've seen far fewer jobs where just HTML, CSS, interaction patterns, accessibility are, this actually becomes more of like a designer role. We're seeing more like creative, what do they call it? Design engineers or creative technologists, whose job it is to like come up with a way something looks and then turn that into functional front end. And then this JavaScript part, I would say that most front end engineers are expected to be able to do all of this. And then the divide becomes, what kind of JavaScript do you know? Is it like component system JavaScript? Like I can build it in React, I can build it in Vue, Svelte, whatever. But then you don't necessarily climb into the APIs, you don't climb into middleware, you don't climb into data munging, databases, stuff like that. But you can make the component systems work, you can get the interactions wired up, but you won't necessarily like wire up the services that make this thing run, whether those are on-site databases or third-party APIs or whatever. And then there's the other group that I think are like back-end engineers who are moving front-end, where they are very good at the back-end side of JavaScript, and they do a ton of work with databases, APIs, integrations, business logic. But then if you ask them to make something look nice, they're gonna say, no, I just copy pasted this Tailwind thing, which is completely fine. But it's like, to me, that's the divide now. Is like the JavaScript moved. It's no longer JavaScript or no JavaScript. It's what kind of JavaScript. And so that's been interesting, and I think a shift that's new since, because this article is 5 years old, almost 6 years old at this point. And I do think that's the way that I've felt the industry shifting, is that JavaScript is no longer, like, JavaScript is a front end and design concern. It's just a different, like, there's different kinds of JavaScript. There's designy, like front endy, interactive JavaScript, and then there's like heavy integration, data munging and API calls and dealing with network stacks and server rendering and all that kind of stuff that is also JavaScript. So it's becoming different types of jobs. What's up, Danny? How you doing? I was just talking about you earlier. Let's see here. Backend is the code that runs on the server, front end is the code that runs in the browser. Yeah, and I think this is the part that's tricky, is that yes, backend is the code that runs on the server, front end is the code that runs on the website, but when you write an Astro site, both of those live in the same file. And then when you open a utility function, you're writing server code, but it feels like front end code. But and this is where I think it's getting so blurry and messy. It is just a good challenge. Hyperplex is a good YouTube channel for breaking down this kind of thing. Nice. Okay, that's a good one to check out. Remade the iOS calculator, and yes, see, that's the kind of stuff that I think is really good. Like, figuring out how to do those sorts of things and make them feel nice is such a good approach. Take on local first software. I don't know enough about it. Like, I've heard people talking about it. To my understanding, it seems like just a different way of organizing the data. I'm not sure. Like, I guess I'm not sure what the major benefits are. Probably something that I should peek at and learn a little bit more about. What's up, Mahmood? What's up, Proxy? I don't want to build a new thing. Yeah, I know. That's how I go. But yeah, we're definitely going to do this. That'll be fun. I can mention everyone on Discord before doing a stream, which I am definitely not doing consistently. Let's see. I got way behind on comments, didn't I? Let's see. Building a notification bot sounds like a Learn with Jason episode. Yeah, we're going to get that done. And then Cribs edition. That could actually be kind of, so here's a constant tension that I'm fighting with, which is I don't know where the line is between helpful sharing and like acting famous. You know what I mean? Is it useful? Like, where does it go from being useful to just like showing off, right? And so I think about that a lot, because I remember watching MTV Cribs, and there were people that I really wanted to see what their house looked like, and then there were people who I'd never heard of, and I was like, why is this person showing me their house? Like, do they think they're important? And sometimes I feel the same way about social media, where there's this line, and I can't define it, where you cross from sharing to performing, and I'm very wary of like when I'm gonna tip across that line, because I don't know. I've always talked about, like, I don't really like the idea of fans. I like the idea of fellow travelers, and you know, my goal isn't to be like a leader or a figurehead. My goal is to just be like part of a community that's doing cool stuff. And so that's why so much of the stuff I'm trying to build is around like getting all of y'all to come, like getting the community to come hang out with me and teach me stuff, getting people to come hang out and build things with me, getting y'all to like build stuff as part of the hackathon. Like it's always about like trying to do stuff together. And I always feel when it turns to something that's like just me, I'm kind of like, is this right? Am I being a douchebag? And I don't know. I don't know where the douchebag line is. So that's a like an ongoing like challenge I'm trying to I don't know, because like if y'all want to see how I stream, I'd love to share that because I think there's, you know, I've learned a lot. I've been doing it for a long time. It's also like prohibitively expensive because I've accumulated shit over 6 years, and you know probably you don't need any of it. But it could also, I don't know, maybe it's fun to see like you can make a decision about what's actually useful versus what's not. I don't know. How to be a good dev? Practice, get feedback, and pay attention to that feedback, and just stay curious, right? Like it's just like anything else. It's a little bit slow. You got to build foundational skills. You got to continually add more things onto the list of things that you know, and it's a never-ending pursuit. But if you stick with it, you know, the more of a foundation you've built, the more you have, like the easier new things are to pick up. So it gets faster, right? And after a while, you go from feeling like you're learning piano by watching a tutorial and you go, where do they put their hand? And then you have to look at your hand and you go, okay, like press this and this. It doesn't really sound like a song. You just know you're playing the right notes, to where you've kind of memorized a song and you can play that song exactly as long as nobody interrupts you or distracts you, to where you can play that song without having to think about it. You can have a conversation while you play, to now you can just listen to a song and you can kind of just play because now you get it. The music makes sense, right? All of that is practice and being kind of consistent and making, you know, deliberate practice, deliberate effort, staying curious, always sort of being immersed in it. And code is the same way. Like if you keep doing it, if you keep practicing, it'll hit a point where you're not thinking so hard about what the code is that you're writing. You're thinking more about the functionality you're trying to build. And that's, I would say, when you start to feel like you just play. And everybody can get there. It's a matter of like practice and continual effort and focus, and it will happen. How can you improve design skills as a front-end developer and stop getting stuck at the beginning of projects thinking of the design? I mean, first would be to have the hard conversation about whether or not you actually care about being a good designer. Because if you want to be a good designer, there are excellent courses out there to teach you how to do design. It's design and code are not as different as you think. There is a definite science to what makes things look good. There's spacing, there's weights, there's color theory, there's all this stuff. It's all science. And taste emerges from understanding that science and from observing what a lot of people have done using and breaking the rules that are out there, right? So with effort and with dedicated practice, you can just take some courses on how to be a designer and you will get better as a designer. You can choose how much of that you need to do, right? Whether you want to be an expert designer, like full-blown design engineer, creative technologist, or whether you want to know exactly enough design that you can make something for yourself that you don't actively hate. If you don't want to learn how to design, you can also pay for Tailwind UI. Save yourself a bunch of time, copy paste UIs that look the way you want, use ShadCN, use Radix. All of them are built to make it so that you don't have to design, right? You can just assemble building blocks into something that looks pretty dang good out of the box, and you don't have to worry about it. And barring that, you know, you can always just go steal. Like, go look at a UI that you think is good. Like, how many websites look identical to the linear website now? Like look at this. Like, oh, they changed their website because everybody ripped them off so hard. The like purple gradient with the big text, like every single company ripped off the previous linear design because it was really good. And you can just do that, right? Like, don't rip it off pixel for pixel, but just go take inspiration from what they did and make it look mostly like that. You know, choose your own fonts, choose your own colors, but it's okay. Imitation is how most people get stuff done. And the more you learn about design, the more you realize that everybody's copying their influences. The trick is to find the line between like outright copying, like plagiarism, like I copy pasted your code, and inspired, like, yeah, I really like the way you organize this hero, so I'm going to organize my hero like that. And I made my own big colorful header, but they all look the same. It's just not. They just can't be like carbon copies. You can't directly rip off somebody's design. But that's the core of. I think that's the core of it. Any advice for someone getting started learning in cybersecurity? I don't know a lot about cybersecurity, so I don't know that I am the right person to ask. Like my approach to cybersecurity is to listen to my friends who are cybersecurity experts and do what they say. There are really intelligent people and really experienced people in this community. I mean, Ian Coldwater knows everybody, so anybody that Ian Coldwater recommends, you should take as a good source. There are people who are newer to it, like Taylor Alexis and Allie, what's her name? She goes by Dev Out. Oh no, I'm forgetting her Twitter handle. But there's ALI. She does cybersecurity. There's Kat Cosgrove. There's a lot of really, really capable people in that space. If you follow some of the big names, you'll get connected to the smaller names, and then you will learn what they're studying and learning. But I don't know what they're studying or learning. I just know that they've been doing it for a long time, and that the people who follow them probably don't suck that much because they have hard filters. What's up, Arvind? Thank you so much. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you enjoyed that. Oh yeah, Brad Frost has some really good think pieces on like how like dev is organized and how to think about that stuff. What's up, Nicola? Enjoying about current web technologies, you get to choose where things happen, client versus server. Not much where it has to happen that way. It's helping make the web more efficient and usable for the end user. Yeah, I do think like choice is progress forward. And then editing, like increasing choice is the first step. Editing is the where quality actually happens. It's the sort of the same thing with like a story, like unbounded imagination. You can do anything you want. But if you stop here, you're not solving any problems. You're leaving people with way too much choice. There's too many ways they can go. They can't have a satisfying experience because there's too much to explore. So then the editing kicks in, and you have to bring everything back together to where you're providing really good defaults, where you're providing really good guidance and best practices, so that people can feel confident that the choices they're making are good ones. I would say that that's the stage that a lot of the frameworks, like I would say Astro is a good example of a framework that is sort of heavy on editing. They have built it to be a defaults are good framework. One that's still in the sort of everything is possible and it's hard to know what the best practices are would be Next.js, because they've made several ways to solve the same things, and their guidance isn't like why you should use a thing in certain situations. Their guidance is typically like the thing we most recently released is the best thing. And that creates, depending on what time you learned, a different set of best practices that aren't necessarily contradictory, but that aren't clear, right? So you have tons and tons of options, tons and tons of flexibility, but not a lot of guidance or best practices unless you start looking for other experts in the field. Like, for example, Jack Harrington just launched Pro Next.js, which is his, and Jack is probably one of the most pragmatic devs I know who works with Next. So he's giving a very specific set of best practices, how it works, where you might want to use it, so on and so forth. It's that's ProNextJS.dev, yeah. So like this is what Jack just released, and I would say go check it out. Like it's a good course, a good opportunity to get like opinions, best practices, right? If you're an XJS dev. Ending with Ali, that's who I was thinking of in cybersecurity. Let me get into... can you get feedback, code reviews as a self-taught developer? So there are ways to get it. There are ways to get it that hurt more than others. Like if you post your code in public, people will comment on it. Like there's Reddits that are good for this. There are Discord communities that are good for this. All of that is stuff that we definitely. There are ways to get it. Depending on which community you're in, they could be more or less helpful. But yeah, we'll see. Aren't I the guy from 4Devs one? Yeah, that's true. Okay, Goofatron, do I look like your older brother, or are we both just bald white guys with beards? Because I hear that a lot, and then I'm like, show me a picture, and it's almost always like, nah, we're just white guys with beards. You know who I did find that I think I look a lot alike is this guy on Instagram that I love. He goes by, I think it's Big Fits. Yeah. So he does this gentleman here. Let me see if I can find one of his video ones. Watch when he does things where I'm like, wait, is that me? There's like an angle where like here, if somebody were to take a photo of us, I think you could hold them side by side and somebody like, is that the same person? I don't know. Anyways, this is if you like fashion, this dude is very good to follow for fashion, by the way. David is he's great. Let's see. Learn the Mern stack. Mern stack's great. Want to build projects, recommend some projects to build. Look around the internet, find stuff that you think is interesting, scope it way the hell down, and try to build it. I mean, like, I know when I talk about this but I guess there's like two types of this. Okay, this is where I want to like crawl into a hole because I have to talk about myself in the third person. So, okay. Just get ready to roast me because I'm going to say something foolish. But when you get into like leadership positions, right? You find yourself in a position where people are looking at what you're doing. I find that there are like two ways to approach it. There's a way that feels kind of cult-like I'm in charge. You look to me. You got to do things the way that I said that we do them. And I would say that's the like. I don't know, like Andrew Tate is like this. Like he's very. He's culty, right? Like you got to do it the way I say. If you don't do it that way, you're wrong. And there are other folks in the JavaScript community who are the same way. And we're not doing names. Don't start dropping names in the comments. But I think that there are folks in the web dev community who sort of approach this as a like, I'm right, you're wrong. If you don't do what I like, you're bad. And then there's the other approach to leadership that I think is more of like, we're in this together and I'm going to be the one to set an example. And I hope that that's the camp that I'm falling into where what's happening, like the reason that I'm in any position of leadership at all is because people like the example that I set and they like the way that I interact with other people. They like the way that I treat other people. And hopefully what's happening is that I'm setting a good example that people then want to emulate, right? And that's the community, is people who want to treat people a certain way. And we've decided that the way we treat people is respectfully, with open arms, in a way that's driven by fun and curiosity and play, as opposed to a like, do it our way or you're wrong, this fear of being excommunicated, fear of being judged. It's the opposite of that, right? Because I think that those communities have weaker leadership. Like if I were to suddenly say everybody now has to go buy this certain thing, you wouldn't do it. You'd be like, no, like you're not my supervisor, right? Like I'm just a guy, and we do stuff together because I'm, like I'm part of a community. I'm somebody that hopefully you'd want to be friends with, right? And that I think is the major difference, because I think when you get into the other side, the culty side, when somebody says, you know, for example, like, okay, nobody's allowed to buy this brand because they violated our what our code of ethics, our coolness, our something, then everybody in that group feels now this pressure that they can't do that thing or they'll be excommunicated from the group as like a traitor or something. That to me is sort of the antithesis of community. That's a cult. And I don't want that. So I'm always really nervous about like any position of feeling like I'm in leadership, because I don't want to be making decisions on your behalf. I want to be showing you the way that I make decisions for me so that you can factor that information into how you make decisions for yourself, right? And if at any point the decisions I make don't line up with yours, you don't have to feel guilt about not agreeing with me. It doesn't mean you're like against the spirit of the community or that you're like at odds with one of us. We're allowed to have different opinions. That's what makes a community strong. So anyways, that's why I talk about it the way I talk about it. And that's like my core fear is I don't ever want to accidentally tip across that line to where it sounds like I'm saying do this or you're wrong, or be like me or you're wrong, because that's never what I want. And you know, in the past I've been in situations where I thought that's what I wanted. Like I've had I think about it like relationships and romantic relationships, and I thought for a long time that I wanted a romantic relationship where my partner was sort of like there to support me, you know, like almost as like they were there to sort of take on my ambitions as their own, and to be there as a support structure, like the very people call it like trad wifing, right? Like your job is to forfeit your life to your husband so that your husband can go like do whatever it is that he does, and you support the family and take care of the household, right? I thought maybe that was what I wanted. Like I was like, oh yeah, that'd be great, because then I could go do all the stuff I want and I'd have somebody who like loved me and whatever. And as soon as I got into a relationship where somebody started hollowing themselves out to do all the things I wanted, so that, and then like I felt like I was the only one making decisions, I immediately felt gross about it. Like I like not like toward them, but toward myself. Like I was like, wait, I just like stole this person's agency. And I don't feel good about that. And I don't want a community to be set up in the same way where we're taking somebody's agency. Like, you know, on Tuesdays or Wednesdays we wear pink, right? That's not how this works. That's not what we're here for. We're here to learn and play and grow and show each other tricks and have fun together, right? Would love to get some advice. Started a developer role a few months ago. Issue I face is a lack of understanding flow between all that's going on in the code base. Ooh, okay, so this actually can be a really good use for the some of the AI tools. Like I know Cody from SourceGraph is supposed to be really good at this, and I believe Cursor is supposed to be good at this. There's one called Augment that's supposed to be really good at this. All of what they're trying to do is they can read the whole code base, and then you can say, what does this function do? And it'll read the code base and tell you. And then you can say, where is this function used? And it will show you all the places that it's used. And you can say, generate an example call of this function. And then you can kind of test it and see how it works. That, I think, is such a brilliant way of using AI, because it has the context. The code base is there. And you can say, in the context of this code base, what is going on? And that, to me, I think is really good. Barring that, like if you don't have access to one of those tools or you're not comfortable using one of those tools, I really heavily rely on pair programming. And so my motto with pair programming has always been, do as much as you can before you feel stuck. And like stuck to me is random guessing. If I like, I'll try a couple things, you know, so I'll try the task. I can't do the task. I'll use my intuition, or if I don't have any intuition, I'll kind of take the closest thing to a best guess I can make. I don't get any results. I'll try to think of other things I can try. And if I can't think of anything else and I'm about to start randomly guessing, you know, my Google's not turning anything up. I'm not sure what the thing's called, so I don't know how to search for it on Stack Overflow. Then I go and I get a senior dev or somebody who's, you know, more experienced with the project, and I say, hey, can you walk me through how this works? We pair program. They talk me through it. I ask them for context stuff. I ask them, where does this come from? Is there any extra information? Are there docs I didn't find, et cetera, et cetera. And I try to internalize all of that. I take notes if I need to. I'll write myself a little like README in my I'll update the docs if there are docs. I'll write it for myself if there aren't. And then I try to make sure that I don't ask that same question again. And what I found is that when it's taken that way, like when I go up to somebody and say, okay, I'm working on this, I'm stuck, here's what I've tried, I'm not sure what to do next, can you help me get unstuck? That is very rarely met with like, how dare you interrupt me? That's what the tech lead on your team is supposed to do. That's their job. So as long as I'm not asking the same questions over and over again, and as long as I'm making a good faith effort to solve my own problems before I go ask somebody else, usually people are pretty willing to help me. And that really, like, it'll take a long time. It takes 6 months to ramp up on a code base, And so just knowing that that's true and knowing that effort needs to be made, I think will turn into it turns into a good relationship with the team, because they see you as somebody who asks questions, learns, and then is able to do the thing that they learned. That to me is a sign of strength for somebody who's newer in their career. And it also is the sort of thing that, like, if you ask me a lot of questions and I can see that you're not asking those questions anymore, that's like a provable point of progress that I can use when we talk about whether we're going to promote you in the next cycle. So all of that, I think, is I would say partially about getting context in a code base, but also just about how to like navigate a team environment. If it's remote, it can be a little bit trickier, but there's great tools like Tuple will let you do remote pair programming. You can get on a Slack huddle or a Discord call. You can just fire up Zoom or Google Meet or something. It's not as fun as being able to just sit next to somebody, but it's still very effective and it works really well. Let's see. Camera gear is ridiculously expensive. Is making a cooking channel still on my radar? Yes, it is. But I talked about this earlier about being able to do like one new thing at a time. The unfortunate reality is that a cooking channel is a large expense and a large time investment that has I don't know how to make money doing it. And so it's purely for hobby. And at this moment in time, I just don't have the bandwidth and the spare cash to be able to do it at the level that I want to do it. But yes, I want to do it, but I just haven't been able to do it yet. DNS management. I actually just do all my DNS management through Netlify. I buy my domains through Porkbun, and then I point the name servers to Netlify. I've had good luck with it. I don't really think it's, one versus the other is particularly good or bad. It's just I host everything on Netlify, so that's sort of like the centralized place where I deal with stuff. Let's see. What do we got? Borrow, not steal. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, yeah, right. Imitation is a form of flattery. I think that. How to not get stuck at the start of thinking of the design, start by getting all the things implemented, how to report the design. That is actually really, really good advice. This is advice that I give on the Web Dev Challenge too, because 4 hours is not that much time when you're actually working on a project. So one of the things that I think about a lot is what's the core functionality? And if you implement the core functionality, you can demo that, right? You can say, I didn't have time to design this, but it works. It's much more difficult to say, this is really beautiful, but it doesn't work. So let me explain what it would have done if I'd had more time. So inverting the functionality there, and also, getting a little more comfortable with like, what does semantic HTML look like, so that you know that you're not going to have styling problems later. So for example, using like H1 and H2 tags as opposed to like divs with styles, or paragraph tags that you've made different sizes. That way you sort of have like a visual hierarchy even in the unstyled app. Like there's this thing, I don't know if anybody still does it, but there used to be this thing called World Naked CSS Day, where you would turn off the style sheets for your website for one day. And it was a way of showing that, websites are still usable without CSS. They just all kind of look boring. And if you build it that way, that tends to work out really well. Let's see. Pragmatism is superior to tribalism. Yes, exactly. Um, the Boop group. Yeah, I think for a while I was calling like if you subscribe to the site, I was calling it the Boop Troop, but I don't know. I don't know. Whether I'm going to stick to web dev or maybe transition to cross-platform. So I have a little bit of content on React Native and Flutter. I am planning on doing a little bit more. I was talking to a couple folks about some Expo stuff, maybe some Flutter stuff because they've got some cool things happening. I'm going to have we're going to talk about Tori, which is a cross-platform Rust framework that apparently works with pure TypeScript, which I hope is true because my Rust is not great. But yeah, I would say my focus is web dev and will continue to be web dev, but I like exploring a little bit outside the bounds just to get a taste of what's out there. But yeah, in terms of content focus, it'll continue to be web dev for the foreseeable future. Working almost 2 years, feel like there's no progress on your knowledge. Try to make your own projects, but always abandon after you make a login feature. So skip a login feature. You know, use Clerk so that your login is already built, or because again, you're not trying to build businesses, you're trying to learn. And so if you want to build something and it's for learning, then don't worry about a login. Just build something for yourself, and it's okay if you don't have a login implemented. Or again, like something like Clerk on the free tier, you might not have two-factor auth, but it's not a real business, right? You're just building something for learning, and that is completely okay. So I think that's sort of the game is remove barriers, right? Like not everything you build has to be completely perfect, completely feature complete, ready to compete with $1 million businesses. It can be a toy that you built to make yourself laugh, or to learn a point, or to show your friends how something could work. Like that's an even better, I think, application of your weekend time than trying to build more businesses, because the businesses sort of emerge when you discover a problem that you have that you think you can solve. If you turn learning into a commercial concern, then it inhibits your learning, because if you want to build something but you can't find a business case, are you just not going to build it then? Like, no, build stuff for fun. I'd say I have a conference talk I give on that. Build dumb shit for fun. And the more you do that, the fun keeps you engaged and makes you want to finish, makes you want to share. And the building is what advances you in your career. And it kind of, making it dumb is a great way to lower the barrier to entry. It doesn't matter. Like you're building it because it makes you smile, not because it's important or because it's a full business. And that way you can actually learn the thing instead of being worried that the thing you're building isn't worth it. Let's see. How much do I know in and around DevOps? I know just enough. A long time ago, I would manage PHP servers and stuff. So I know how to, I've set up Nginx and Apache, and I've configured firewalls, and but I always do it using tutorials. It's not something that I could do off the top of my head. I've set up things like mail servers. I will never do that again. I will always pay for a service. I've managed Docker files. I've set up the basics of all that kind of stuff. I've remoted into a server to download all the things that I need so that I could actually run it. Sure, I remember getting Linode VPSs. But I guess my challenge, a lot of that stuff isn't necessary for the work that I do, and for the companies that I've joined, they typically have a specialist role for that, and I don't want that to be my whole job. So my challenge has been that I learned it when it was necessary, and then I progressed to a point, and the industry progressed to a point where knowing that stuff wasn't necessary. So my skills haven't continued to progress in DevOps because it hasn't been relevant to my ability to get my job done. And because I don't want to be a DevOps engineer, then there's not really an incentive for me to grow those skills, because DevOps engineers run companies that do DevOps far better than I ever could at much lower rates than my hourly. Let's see. Cloudflare handle DNS, I think makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Lionel. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Cloud provider do I recommend? Whatever one you like. They're all roughly equivalent. Like each of them has its own trade-offs in terms of like ease of use and all that kind of stuff. There's probably the most tutorials for AWS if you're not familiar with any of them. I don't know. I mean, I tend to use Netlify, which is an abstraction on top of mostly AWS with some multi-cloud stuff thrown in there, but it really depends. I mean, Cloudflare is another option that does, depending on what you're after. They have a lot of like cloud provider stuff that can let you be not on one of the big three. All of them come with developer experience challenges because they're meant to be infrastructure, not necessarily like super fun to use dev tools, which is another one of the reasons that I lean towards something like Netlify is like, I don't really want to think about it. I just want to deploy and go. Let's see. Where is the page with the books I recommend? That is it's my uses page. So lwj.dev/uses, throwing that into the chat here. Building a task app. Yeah, collecting Pokemons. I love that. Same. I don't do mail servers anymore. I just use, I know that it's just handing over all the keys to Google, but like I am not doing it myself. I use Google Workspaces. Quick guide on that I'm not the right person to do that. You know who would be good at this is Annie. So where's the right place to find? So Annie has done a series on like kind of how Docker works. She works at Fly, and let's see if I can find. Where is it? I thought it was called like Docker without Docker, but maybe oh, here it is. Docker without Docker. Here is a video on kind of how this stuff works, which is pretty interesting. Also, like the Fly team is doing really interesting stuff as well. Like that in and of itself would be worth checking out as a cloud provider. How do I approach learning a new thing? I do a combination of like, depends on how much context I have. If I know it, like if it's JavaScript, I already know JavaScript pretty well, so I don't need like the hello world of like how to do an npm install or how to set up my Git environment. So I'll usually skip past that, and I might just look on the docs page at like what does their hello world project look like, and if it's a convex provider or something, I'm like, okay, great, I get it. I know how providers work. Let me go to their API and we'll just roll. If it's something that's a little more outside of my wheelhouse, if I'm trying something for the first time that's new to me, then the way I might approach that is I'll go watch somebody build it on video so that I can sort of see how they move from thing to thing inside the code base and how all the pieces fit together, because I just learn better through that video visuals. And then I'll go to the docs to have the actual code that I need, and I'll build it there. And if I need to, I'll go back to the video if I like don't understand something in the docs. But it sort of depends on my level of familiarity, but generally speaking, it's going to be a combination of hands-on docs and video. React 3 Fiber is dope. I like it. I just did something with Sarah Vieira the other day where we were using React 3 Fiber. Or I guess we more specifically it was React 3 Fiber and then this wrapper called Dre that was really good. This episode was super fun. We got so much further than I expected. Have I tried V0? No, I generally don't use Vercel stuff, and I'm not going to get into why, but I'm not a Vercel user. What's up, Shruti? How you doing? Saw that I use Clerk for auth. So I've talked about this a little bit. Generally speaking, I will spend more than an hour a month on managing auth if I roll it on my own. Clerk, in the professional context at the scale I would need it, is $100 a month. So it almost certainly is cheaper for me to pay for Clerk than it would be to build it myself. So that being the case, it's very difficult for me to justify building things that I can pay for that are cheaper than my time. So that's sort of where I've landed on Clerk. That being said, I don't know Keycloak. Auth.js is an option that people like. I know that people really like that one. How do I deal with imposter syndrome as a junior in a very fast-paced industry? So imposter syndrome is one of those things that it never really goes away. You know, like I was kind of talking about it earlier, where people ask me questions like, who am I? Like, why would you listen to me? But I've been here for 20 something years and I've done a lot of this stuff. And so I know what I know. And I guess the big thing for me was letting go of the idea that I needed to know everything and embracing the fact that this is an infinite game. Like the software industry will continue to evolve. And even if I could stop time and learn every single thing that is true in this exact moment and then start time again, within seconds, my knowledge would be incomplete. And it would be accelerating at a pace, like the available knowledge would be accelerating at a pace faster than I'm capable of learning. It's like YouTube. There's more YouTube videos uploaded in a day than one of us could watch in a lifetime. So we just have to accept that we'll never actually know it all. We'll never actually keep up with it all. We just have to know that we can learn what's relevant to getting the task at hand done. And so imposter syndrome for me should only really be present if you are in a position where people believe that you're capable of more than you actually are. And that typically comes from misrepresenting something. If you are in a job and every time you get a task, you can solve that task, you're not an imposter. Like, is there more you could learn? Yes. Is there something that you could have done better? Probably. Does that mean you're an imposter? Absolutely not. You got a task, you finished the task, everybody's happy, right? You're doing the job you were hired for. You are actively performing the role, which means you cannot be an imposter. So that to me was it's a hard inversion to make when you feel like everybody around you is smarter than you, more capable than you. But the fact is that nobody's expecting you to be somebody else. They're expecting you to be you. You were hired into your job. And if you're doing your job and people are saying, here's a task, and you do it and they say, good job, thank you, you're not an imposter. You are doing exactly what you were hired to do, right? And so I think that is maybe the big take home here is to really give yourself permission to not be a genius, to not be done, to not have learned everything. And in fact, embrace that like the most senior folks aren't the most senior because they've learned all of the things. It's because they've learned how to search for answers really effectively. They don't worry about not knowing. They know they don't know. They're just really, really efficient at going through sources to locate answers. Thanks, Kelvin. I appreciate that. Do I think Claude changes freelancing? Yes and no. I mean, like, it changes freelancing in the sense that you can build stuff you haven't really worked with before, but is it going like here? So here are the risks I see with that. I can open up an AI tool and I can say, make me a site that does a thing, and it will do that. And I can ship it and I can deliver it and everybody will be happy. When the client or my boss comes back and says, add this feature or change this thing, is the tool going to be able to do that? I don't know, right? And if I can get a really good first round, but I'm not able to make revisions because I don't understand the technology I'm using, and the tool doesn't really understand human language well enough to be able to parse complex feedback and then apply that complex feedback to a complex code system, that then will start to make you look bad as a freelancer because you started out super strong and then you couldn't get anything done after you started getting feedback. That's not good. So does AI change freelancing? 100%. Does freelancing still require you to have skill? 100%. Like it's not something where you can just, say Claude, take the wheel, and all of your problems are solved. Most of coding is not writing code. Most of coding is being able to parse intent from documents, from feedback, from to-do lists, from task lists, and understand the context of code. Not just the context like what does this code do and where is it used, but the context of why is it written the way that it's written? Why do we have these edge cases covered? Why, what historically led to this thing existing? And being able to combine all of that context and requests and information and turn that into a few lines of code. The few lines of code are not the work, right? The few lines of code are the output of all the work that was done understanding the problem. So AI doesn't replace that, and it won't replace that. What it will allow us to do, for example, is if your job is just straight copy pasting or one touch, never see, you never get maintenance or revision requests. Yeah, Claude's going to make that kind of, honestly, you might not even need a developer anymore. You might just have like a client saying what they would say to their developer to Claude instead. And that, but those are data entry jobs, right? Like data entry jobs have always been at risk in any field. And so that's the important thing to keep in mind, is that like AI is not doing abstract thought. It's doing pattern matching. We are good at pattern matching. AI is worse at pattern matching. So that's the thing that we need to recognize as our skill. Our ability to combine lots of disparate things into actionable steps and into 2 or 3 lines of code that don't look like much, but that took a long way to get there. That's our value. That's what makes us, that's why we're developers. Like anybody can copy paste some code out of Stack Overflow, but why did I pronounce it like Stack Overflow? Anybody can copy paste some code out of Stack Overflow. Understanding what that code does and understanding that that's the code that's going to solve your problem, that's not a thing that gets replaced by computers. You still have to know. You still have to know that the computer did the thing you wanted it to do. So if you're not skilled enough to be a supervisor for your coder, your AI coder, then it's going to get you into trouble later on, is how I feel about it. How do I come up with new ideas for my videos? I don't know. You'll actually see that if you look at my content calendar, that it is largely driven by not me. So, for example, the Web Dev Challenge is driven by, I'm working with sponsors. The sponsor has a tool. I got to come up with a creative way to use that tool. But I'm not coming up with it's not like blank sheet. I know that, for example, Convex is a real-time database backend as a service. I have to make a use case that fits that tool. Like I can't just come up with anything. It has to be something that suits that. And similarly with Learn with Jason, I am looking for people who are doing interesting stuff, and I'm saying, can you come teach me that? So it's less me generating ideas and more me observing the community and trying to highlight people who are doing interesting stuff. So my idea my new generation for ideas is typically through my own experience. Like if I'm working on something and I get stuck and I'm frustrated, that's usually a good sign that I've got something to talk about or make a tutorial about or whatever. But I don't do a ton of that. I tend to do more pulling from the community because I don't know, that pattern works better for me. Have some devs from the syntax on some episodes. I have, in fact. We've got some Scott Talinsky episodes. I think we've got 2. Maybe just the one. Scott taught animation with Svelte. That was super fun. This is a little bit older. It might be on an older version of Svelte. It's definitely on an older version of Svelte because I know that runes weren't out when this was dropped. But I'm also... We're all very busy, like our schedules are kind of wild, but I've been in the very, very early stages of talks with the syntax team about some collaborative stuff. So hopefully that materializes and we'll be able to do some fun stuff, but we'll see. Schedules are hard. Have I ever looked for super tokens? I don't know what super tokens are, so I have not. Let's see. Do you think building a brand for yourself as a developer is essential or depends on person to person? Do the benefits of making a brand outweigh not making a brand? Okay, so this is a really good question because I think that this is an enormous it depends. The thing that is helpful is finding something that helps you stand out. That does not need to be a personal brand. For example, there are a lot of developers that we've never heard of who have unbelievably strong referral networks because they are very, very good at forming strong relationships with their management teams and their leadership teams. Those management and leadership teams move around and they bring people with them, right? So that is a very valid strategy that has nothing to do with personal brand or public personal brand, I should say. You can be an anonymous anime pick open source maintainer and nobody knows who you are, but they know your work, and so they're willing to hire you. You can do like writing. People write books instead of having public profiles, and that's another great way to be visible without having to be a public figure. Having some form of public visibility, though, is extremely beneficial. It's not critical. You don't need it. Lots and lots and lots of people are full-time employed, very happy, do not have any social presence at all, have no interest in it, don't public speak, nothing. And that is, so I want to be very, very clear as I'm talking about this, that like none of this is required. You don't have to do anything. If you like to do it, if you enjoy sharing, teaching, putting stuff out there, it is an unbelievably overpowered way to expand your network and your reach and your ability to get introductions and stuff. If you're interested in teaching, you try it a handful of ways. Write a blog post, maybe do a conference talk, maybe go to a local meetup and teach to 25 people in your local community. Make a YouTube tutorial. See if you can go on somebody's podcast. Any of those things, like any one of those things, would be a good thing for you to do. Releasing open source, contributing to a bigger open source project, helping triage issues is huge. Actually, a lot of companies or a lot of open source projects have a really hard time staying on top of that stuff. Like anything you can do to build a profile is going to help you, because it means that people who aren't in the room with you know who you are and what you do, so that if an opportunity comes up, they can speak up on your behalf. And it's difficult to overstate the impact of that. Emily Freeman had a quote I did an interview with her a while back, and she said, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And that's a really good way to think about networking. Is it's not about like building a Rolodex of like people whose phone numbers you have or something. Like that's fine. But if you think about it more as friendship, if you look at gain the biggest community you have of people that if you saw them, you would high five them and want to get a coffee together, right? Or as far as you want to go on that, like if they came through town, you'd let them stay on your couch, like any of those sorts of things, right? Like you want to have friends, because those are the folks who think of you as a whole person. They value you as more than just a skill set that they can exploit. And with that being the case, when somebody's talking about like, we're hiring, we need somebody to come do this job, they're going to hear that and they're going to think about their friend who has those skills, who's looking for a job, and they're going to say, I've got exactly the person you need. You're going to love them. Let me give you their info, right? That is so much stronger than your resume on a stack, right? So all of that is to say, like, none of it is necessary, but it all helps, right? And that's I guess that's where I'll stop on there, because I could talk about it for a long time, but generally speaking, like, not necessary, very helpful. Let's see. What's up, Josh? How you doing? Yeah, becoming a better developer, interacting with sales, product, and customers. Okay, so this is my cheat code, right? I actually think I don't know. Maybe somebody would argue with me that I feel like this is a hot take, but I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's an under discussed take. I think that progression in this career starts out as like skill. You can't make a computer do stuff. You improve your ability to make a computer do stuff. That'll get you to senior engineer. If you want to then become a staff engineer, a principal engineer, distinguished engineer, whatever the high ranking titles are, where you start to be sort of individual contributor leadership, or if you want to move into like a VP engineering role or a CTO role, I actually think after senior engineer, skill stops mattering because you've reached the ability where you can make computers do stuff, right? That's what senior engineering is. You can get incrementally better at that, but it's not going to move the needle. What starts to move the needle after senior is your ability to get other people to understand what you're trying to do and to align people's goals on doing the work, right? So if you are an engineer, once you get to a certain level, you can do anything that you're asked. And then you start to see the opportunities. You can look at what somebody's planning. You see the product manager, the CEO, somebody comes in and they've got this idea and they're running through their idea, what we're going to work on next, and you see problems. You're like, we've tried this before. It's not going to work, and here's why. A senior engineer who just says, no, we're not going to do that, and it's not going to work. That senior engineer is just going to get overridden and considered grumpy and difficult. The senior engineer who says, can we talk a little bit more about like what's your goal with this? What are we hoping to accomplish? What's true if this all succeeds? Like what is the outcome we're hoping for? And they can kind of talk through all that and then say, all right, so based on the outcomes you described, based on the goals that we've set forth, you're saying that we want this feature. In this previous project, we did it this way and it didn't work for these reasons, but I think we can get the same outcomes if we do X, Y, Z. That senior engineer, now you're every leader's favorite because you just figured out how to get the sales team and the product team and the leadership team and the engineering team all speak in the same language so that you can actually get some work done. That's when you get promoted to staff, to principal, to CTO, whatever it is, right? Those skills, being able to hear the sales team talk about how important MQLs and SQLs and what the enablement materials are and case studies. When you hear them talking about that, and instead of just going, I don't care about that, it's sales stuff, you say, okay, what drives those, right? Okay, so they're talking about SQLs. SQLs come from these places, and they will invest money and time and buy-in and stop DMing my team if they believe we are getting them those things. So the work that I want to prioritize, here's how I can attach that task to generating SQLs. And if I can prove to them through the way that I'm working that I intend to get them more SQLs, they'll stop DMing my team and saying, hey, can you do this quick thing on the side that'll get me an SQL, right? Now you're reducing distractions. The sales team is bought in. They want your help. They want to let you do the thing that you're doing because they understand how it benefits them. That shit is magic. Like if you can get to the point where you can understand what a salesperson wants through their jargon down to the actual outcomes. Same with product, same with leadership, same with accounting, same with everybody. Start to understand that everybody is trying to make a better company with a better product that makes more money. That is exactly what everybody's goal is. And if that's not their goal, they should be fired, right? So inside of everybody's complicated, disconnected visions, it all comes down to that same thread. I want to make sure that we are more successful and that we make more money because that's why I'm here. That is my company. That's my purpose in my department, in my role. If you can understand the jargon, if you can understand their motivations and you can start to reverse engineer all those and turn them into a shared set of outcomes that we all agree on, and explain how the engineering initiative, like cleaning up technical debt, is actually going to improve our ability to quickly ship features so that product's happy. It's going to improve the performance of the website so that we have fewer people bounce MQLs and SQLs. It's going to improve the likelihood that somebody converts into getting a demo because they don't feel like our software is janky, back to sales. All of those things, suddenly you're actually getting approvals. to fix tech debt as opposed to trying to sneak it in, right? Like there are lots of ways that you can have these conversations that will actually really truly move the needle. It's just, it's no longer code. It's now understanding how code fits into the context. So anyways, kind of a hot take, but I think it'll make a very, very big impact. Thanks, Soulless Shoe. What a username. Let's see. What are we doing? We are currently talking about careers and all those good things. Depending on how that goes, we may or may not do a little bit of coding before the next 30 minutes is up, but we'll see. We'll see. What I'm saying is stop worrying about optimizing SQL and start asking questions about how your code can generate more SQLs. Damn it, Josh. How do you know when you're ready for your first freelance project? I would say when you can confidently sell something that you know you can build. Because like there's freelance work that is, we have a bunch of customers in an Excel spreadsheet and we need them entered into our CMS. That's a great way to get comfortable with the CMS. We have a bunch of hard-coded stuff on this site that we need to move into a database, and you can, if you feel confident doing that, that's a good small freelance project that you can just do, right? Any of those is a good way to build skill. But my approach to freelancing was always what I knew I could do plus 10%, because the plus 10% meant that I could take on more ambitious projects. But if it was more than 10% unknown, it was highly likely that I was either going to be way behind schedule or completely fail to do it. And that was going to be my reputation. Like if I miss a deadline, I'm not going to get recommended by that client, right? And word of mouth is everything in freelance. So like what I know plus 10% has been a good guide because it means that I can almost guarantee that outcome. Yeah. Extreme career hack. Yeah, I think so. Like, and this is coming from, for anybody who's not familiar, like my reason for making this claim about how after senior, the job is about establishing context and shared goals and like steering opinion as opposed to being better and better at making computers do stuff. I've been in web dev and engineering in some various capacity for over 20 years now. And I went from I ran an agency, then I was an engineer at IBM, worked on their front end team. I ended up being like their front end architect. I left, I went to Gatsby, I worked on dev tools there, ended up building their developer experience program and a lot of the internal tools that made the community programs work, like GitHub automations and swag stores and stuff like that. Then I went to Netlify, where I was a principal developer experience engineer. So I worked in the product with the product engineers on like refining APIs. I built a lot of public-facing websites and projects, like mini apps to help engage the community, get people more engaged. And then eventually I got promoted to the VP of developer experience. And for a short time toward the end, I was the acting VP of marketing. I've been doing this for a very long time, and the reason that I was able to get those promotions is because I've spent a ton of time. Like when I was in an agency, my whole job was understanding what somebody who wasn't an engineer wanted. They would come to me and they would say, I need a thing. And then they would tell me what they wanted and they would tell me how much they wanted to spend. And I had to then negotiate with them and say, okay, based on what you've asked for and based on what you can spend, this is the code I can generate. And that will condense your budget and your desires into an actual delivered artifact. That skill set translated into the way that I talked to leadership at IBM about how we should be rethinking the IBM cloud front end and like middle tier. And that led to buy-in where I was able to go and build some of the internal tooling that I thought we needed that really reshaped the way that the front ends were built, and ultimately turned into me being our SVP's like pet engineer who he used as like an internal educator to go and try to drive adoption of new best practices across the org. When I went to Gatsby, it was kind of the same thing. I came in, they hired me as an engineer without really giving me a job. They were like, we know you're smart and you're going to figure out something to do, which dream job, right? And then what I identified was that like we had plenty of people who could build Gatsby. What we didn't have were people who understood the community and people who understood how to get more people to want to use and talk about it. And so I built the community programs there based on what I understood. And I built engineering artifacts to serve those purposes, but I had to identify those purposes first. I basically created that whole motion because that was what was necessary. That was the outcome that I saw based on the goals and what I was seeing in the community and all that kind of stuff. That was what put me on the radar so that Sarah Drasner tried to hire me at Netlify. Like she saw my work, she saw the way I was doing stuff, and she pulled me in. And so all of that was, very little of my job or of my career has been driven by like, I wrote cool code and somebody was like, wow, cool code. My career has been entirely driven by the fact that I am able to identify underlying challenges, and then the stuff I build, technically impressive or otherwise, solves those problems. I'm able to deliver technical solutions to complex problems in a way that maybe somebody would look at my code and say that's not very good code, but the fact of the matter is it achieved the outcome. And I think that's why I ended up being a principal engineer and then a vice president later on. And I think that's why people are still willing to hire me today to explain and teach and advocate for their tools, is that they see that that's what I do. They're not looking for the most clever, most perfect coding solutions. They're looking for somebody who understands the landscape and can actually connect the dots between different motivations and necessary outcomes. So that's, yeah. I'm a developer, but not in a traditional way. Doing all this YouTube networking stuff helped me not pursue the traditional route. I mean, the traditional route, I would say the traditional route exists less and less. Because like nobody gets it. My dad came up in a world where you got a job and you kept that job until you were 65 and then you would retire, right? And you have a pension and stuff. Like my mother-in-law is one of the last remaining people I know who's got a pension because she worked at the same credit union for 50 years. And when she retired, she had gone from, whatever her first job there was to being a vice president. And she has a dope pension fund and amazing. But that world is gone. Like there's no companies that offer pensions anymore. I don't even think the credit union she was at no longer offers pensions. She was one of the last people who was able to retire with one. So there's not a traditional path where you like get a job, work hard and get promoted and then you retire. You have to job hop. You have to leverage, what you learned at one job into a better rate and a better title at the next job. And people leave every, 2 to 3 years, it seems. All of that is I think just par for the course. And so me being on YouTube, me being a visible educator, me being on conference stages, me having written the books that I wrote 10 years or 15 years ago. Oh my God, it was 15 years ago. That stuff all helped open doors, and it made it more likely that somebody would take the call when I said, hey, are you hiring? They would say, what do you want to do? As opposed to being like, who are you? And I think that's the major advantage when I talk about building a network, when I talk about building a public profile, when I talk about sharing things in public, it's that it opens doors in a way that it's just really, really hard to do otherwise. Because if somebody doesn't know who you are, like the term that we hear a lot, at least in the Western world, is stranger danger, right? We talk about stranger danger. And if you've never met somebody, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what they're doing. Are they trying to help you? Or are they trying to get something out of you? Or are they trying to, like, what's going on? What's about to happen? Whereas if you've seen somebody around, even if you don't actually know them, you form a prior opinion of what they're like based on how they conduct themselves in public. And so if you think about, I don't know, let's talk about some celebrities. Think about Seth Rogen. What is Seth Rogen like? Right? We don't know. We actually don't know what he's like. He could be a terrible person. But he seems like he's a pretty awesome, chill, fun to be around person, right? When you see somebody like, I don't know, like Tom Cruise seems a little frenetic. He seems like he'd be a little chaotic to hang around. And we've seen the tabloids confirm that is true. So like if somebody is out there hiring, and somebody who has the public presence of Seth Rogen comes in and says like, "Hey, I see you're hiring. Like, I'd be interested in that." They've already decided that they think Seth Rogen is kind of a cool guy, he's kind of a chill guy, probably be pretty friendly, he's probably good for the team, and they've seen his work. So hey, yeah, you know what? Why don't we talk? And now that doesn't mean you're going to get through the interview, but it means you get one, and that's a huge advantage in this market. Whereas somebody, you know, who's got the bad reputation, the Christian Bale who like yells and throw things on set, like for somebody who, if he comes and says, I want this job, somebody who's seen that might go, we don't really want that kind of drama around here, and they might pass on it, right? So there's also a double-edged sword of being very public, is like if you put off an abrasive personality, that can also prevent you from getting opportunities. So, you know, be clear with what you're going to do, what you're going for. And if you consider yourself to be a particularly like prickly person, like maybe don't make an effort out of making it public, because it could work against you. You gotta take all this stuff and sort of measure how would it serve you specifically. Like it's very important to recognize what your strengths are. Like, because I could say, yeah, go make a YouTube channel, but if you hate being on camera, you're either going to be miserable and you're going to be signaling to everybody that you like being on camera. So when you get hired, they're going to say, oh yeah, you like being on camera. Why don't you give this conference talk? Oh yeah, you like being on camera. Why don't you make this demo? Why don't you go do this sales call? All right, you get put into these positions where basically you've informed everybody, the pie eating contest where the prize for winning is more pie. You've informed everybody through your actions that you want to do a thing, so they will offer more of that to you. If that's not what you want, don't do it. Right? Like, this is sort of the core challenge is if you don't want to be perceived, if you don't like a lot of public attention or public scrutiny, then don't seek it, right? You don't need it to have a good career. It's just one of those things where it becomes there's a sizable advantage in being public if you are putting off a public image that people want to engage with. And so I think being publicly friendly for a very long time has been a huge benefit to me in my career. And I think that most of the people who meet me, I hope, would say that I act the same way in person that I do on videos like these. And as I, you know, when you see me online, I'm just like that. I try not to put on any persona or character. Like, this is just me. And so most people who have reached out to me, they like the way that I present myself, and they are willing to have a conversation because of that. And the people who don't like me don't take my calls, right? Like, they're not reaching out to collaborate because they've seen the way I do stuff, and if they're not feeling it, they're not feeling it. Like, I think there's probably a sizable group of people who find me cringy as all hell and don't want me anywhere near their brand, and that's okay, right? Because I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm okay with that. And if that's not your style, that's fine. I wouldn't want to have to fight you on what what the approach should be. Like, if a company thinks that what I do is cringy and then they hired me, then I would be suggesting things and they would be like, no, we hate that. No, we hate that. Like, we're both going to be sad, right? So it's kind of it's a filtering device too, to make sure that you find people who consider you to be their people, or at least a candidate to be their people. How long does it take to go from first job to like a skilled senior engineer? I don't know. I mean, this is such an individually weighted question. Like, if you are very deliberate about seeking to improve, I mean, what's the math? They say like 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, right? So here's 10,000, and we're working, 2080, right? So if you're working a full-time job and you are intentionally trying to become great at that job, within 5 years, you will become skilled, like about as skilled, like you'll reach the top 10% probably of being able to do that job. But then if you're not focused, like if you're in a job that you don't care for and maybe only half of your time is being spent trying to get better, then maybe it'll take you 10 years. If you are not super engaged in your job at all and you only really I don't know, do the odd side project. So let's say you spend one weekend or one day per weekend on a fun side project, but you don't learn shit at your job, then I don't know, maybe it takes you 25 years, right? So, and this is, and like 10,000 hours is not a hard number. It's actually been broadly debunked, but the general idea is that deliberate practice is what makes expertise. And so the amount of deliberate practice you do is what influences how quickly you progress. If you are not deliberately practicing, you might, Scott Hanselman, I don't know if this is his quote or if he's repeated it from somebody else, but are you having like 20 years of experience, or are you having the same year of experience 20 times? Those are the types of questions that you've got to ask, because it's not just about like, if I am in this chair for 5 years, I'll be a senior. You got to work, you got to grow, you got to learn, you got to make sure that you're stretching yourself and pushing yourself to understand more of how things work. And whenever you hit a problem, you're going to understand why that problem existed, not just how to patch whatever the issue was, right? That's what makes expertise. And so it's not a matter of like finite amounts of time. It's a level of effort sustained over time. But I think, safely speaking, if you are putting in dedicated effort to hit senior, I think you can do it in 3 to 5 years. I think that titles are very inflated, and I think that people will often just grant a senior title after being at a place for a year because you need to be promoted. So I also think there's a major difference between like achieving the title and achieving the ability, if that makes sense. So, you know, measure against your own skill set. And I would say that the way that I've looked at it, like the way that I would define this ladder, is that a junior is somebody who can accomplish an individual task with assistance. A like mid-level dev is somebody who can accomplish mid-level tasks with no assistance and who can plan a project with assistance. And a senior level dev would be somebody who can plan and execute entire projects with no assistance. That's sort of the way that I would, and like plan and execute entire projects in a professional context. Like being able to build my own website doesn't mean that I'm a senior dev. Being able to take the requirements from the product team and turn that into a task list and knock out all those tasks and get a product that meets the requirements that were set up by the product team, that's senior level engineering, I think. And then when you get beyond that, now, you know, beyond that, you start getting into the people stuff. Can I turn that task list into something somebody else can do? Am I able to level up the junior to a mid-level engineer? Am I able to, you know, all the things I talked about with talking across the org and understanding outcomes and stuff like that. But, you know, you can get there. It also depends on the job. Like, what are you trying to learn? Like, are you trying to become really, really, really good at exactly one thing? You can probably do that way faster than 3 years. It really just depends. Like, there's so many factors. Let me just like shed a few tears in United States of America. A lot of young devs think they need to have a brand just to get a job, but social media has taught them to be performative, not real. This is really true. Like not many, but a few people who I've met who were nothing like what I saw online, and that's super jarring. And so, yeah, don't put on airs. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. Try to, if you're going to put yourself online, just be online. Like, just be the person that you are, and you'll find the people that like you for you, and you'll also find ways to be more comfortable being yourself. Like, don't try to create a character, because the thing that sucks about a character is once you've created one, you're sort of trapped inside of that character, and it's hard. It's really difficult to rebrand. Like a good example of this is, actually, I don't know if this is a good example anymore. This is a little bit of a dated example, but does anybody remember the comedian Larry the Cable Guy? So Larry the Cable Guy is a fully fabricated persona. He's not a real person. His name's not Larry. He doesn't talk like that. And he, this comedian created the Larry the Cable Guy persona and became very, very famous as Larry the Cable Guy, at which point he then ceased to exist as his own person, because he was so trapped into, people recognized his face. They'd see him on the street. He's Larry the Cable Guy. So that can be a really big challenge if you create a persona that you then have to be, I'm not saying like you have to be like you're obligated. I mean, like people won't let you not be that persona. You are expected to live in the way that you have told everybody that you live, because they see that and they project that on you, and you're kind of cornered into it without some kind of major aggressive rebrand, which we've seen people do, and that's okay. I haven't determined if you'll take my call. Listen, Vinny, you have enough of my API secrets that you already know whether or not I can do this job. You've already looked at my accounts. The compound effect, the 1% every day thing, there's a really good graph for this that I love. If you look at these types of graphs, you can see how, like, this is what that kind of growth looks like. You have, 1%, and it feels like nothing. And it feels like nothing for a long time, and then it kind of goes nonlinear. And you can see here that if you start at like a value of 1 and you get 1% better every day, after a year, you're actually 37 times better, right? And that is really, really, really interesting to think about, because it means you don't have to be making huge strides daily to make huge strides in a yearly or 5-year basis. It just means consistent. If I'm consistently getting a little bit better at the thing that I do every day, I will get so incredibly good at it over the course of a few years that I don't have to worry about being bad at it today. I just have to worry about continually putting in the effort, right? That's the game, and that's the challenge. Being a lifelong learner, and also I think a lot about the learning how to learn, or thinking of learning as a reward in and of itself. Because I think that a big challenge that I've talked to a lot of people about that I actually don't understand anymore, because this has been like a thing that kind of got, drilled into me as a kid. I don't understand what it's like to not enjoy learning something. The idea that like learning is the hard part you do before you can do the fun part, it doesn't really make sense to me, because I've always thought that learning is sort of the part that makes it fun in the first place. If I'm going from not knowing something and then I try it and I'm really bad at it, and then I try it again with some coaching or with some new information, and I can do it a little bit, I'm like, oh man, here we go, I'm learning. And then you do it again and it gets a little better, and then before you know it, you're really good at the thing. I think being good at a thing is honestly kind of boring sometimes, because it's obviously it's great to be able to do the skill, but there's not really a lot of like excitement in that. Somebody's like, hey, can you make a cheeseburger? And I make a cheeseburger, and they're like, that's a really good cheeseburger. I'm like, I'm really glad you enjoyed that cheeseburger. Sharing the skill is very valuable, but like, there's no excitement of like, I'm doing this and I got it right for the first time. Like, I made something that I'm really proud of for the first time. That experience of learning is such a huge reward center for me. And when I hear somebody talk about it like it's not fun, I don't get it. I don't understand. And I hope that it's something that everybody can sort of learn and internalize, is this idea that the learning itself is a lot of the fun. And if you can make the learning fun, then it's easier to keep learning, because you're enjoying the process, which means that you're going to learn faster, which means that you have an easier ability to like accelerate at the thing, and you're going to stick to it longer because it doesn't feel like suffering. It's like so many compound effects that make it feels like a cheat code to me. I think about that a lot. Yeah, it's easy to sleepwalk through stuff or stay just because it's simple, but it doesn't. You're not being challenged. You're not actually growing. You're just kind of like, it's the license plate factory. You stamp it and it goes, and stamp it and it goes. And you can stay there forever. It's totally fine. But if you're expecting to be growing, you won't. How much experience do you need? It depends. Like, if you can do the task that's being asked of you, you are ready. That's really it. So however much time you need, however many times you need to build something to feel as though you can accomplish what's being asked of you, that's how much experience you need. Non-linear from the start, but we don't appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of I think the hard part about exponential curves is it feels it feels so shallow at the beginning that it's not even noticeable. I talk about it like it's like getting a boulder rolling, right? Like if you're at the top of a hill and you're trying to push this boulder, at first you feel like you're putting everything you got into it, and the boulder's not even budging, right? But if you keep going, you can feel it start to kind of rock, you feel it start to move a little bit. There's a little bit of motion, and if you kind of work with that momentum and you keep going, eventually it rolls, right? And once it rolls, then its existing momentum will build and it goes faster and faster, and you know, before you know it, you don't have to make any effort. It is rolling. It's like off to the races. You can't even keep up with it anymore. And that is not exactly how nonlinear stuff works, but it's how it feels to me. Principles over technology. I think that is absolutely true. Did you miss the Clerk Astro platform build bit? You didn't really miss it because we didn't do a ton on it today, but I can do a quick. We're about out of time. So what I will do is I'll do a quick run through where we are, and I'm gonna try to get this thing launched soon. So right now where we're at is we've got this project here. We've got the ability to look at a season of a show. You can choose different seasons. So we've got a whole bunch of episodes in season 2 here, and we can go scroll through those. I got a couple styling issues. I don't know why that one doesn't fit. And then when you get in and you click one, you get its full video, and you can see the details for that person, which there it is. And then it shows you, you know, their name, any links they have, if they've supplied a bio, and then other episodes that they've been in, right? Then we can go into our profile, and our profile includes the ability to, you know, we've got our photo, we've got this data is all in Sanity. And I can go in here and update my profile, which it then does. I can go view my public profile, and this looks a little bit janky because I've got some CSS bugs I haven't fixed yet, but you can see that the bio is here. It shows the other episodes that I'm in. I haven't limited that, which is why this blows out. And my links are here, and then it also shows this bit about me being a Boop enthusiast. And that is managed through my subscription, which runs in Stripe, and I can set my different plan here. And so this is in dev mode, and I don't have the Stripe webhooks thing running, so it doesn't actually update when I change this. But when I make these changes, I can confirm. It says that I'm a Boop enthusiast, and now I have an active, you know, in my dev mode, this is my active subscription that's been running for a while now. And then I come back to the site, and it'll show me what my subscription level is. I've also got whether or not I'm getting newsletters in here. And when I come out to the site, there are members-only videos where we're actually checking to see if I've got the member. And the way that that works, if we look at one of these, is up here at the top. We are getting the current user out of Astro, and or out of Clerk, I should say. And to actually make that work, it's so nice to work with. I'll commit all this code and push it up so that anybody who wants to look can look. But I have this Clerk bit here, and we set it up as an integration. So we've got the Clerk integration going. And then once that's set up, that's actually the whole thing. I added this part here so that we have autocomplete through my TypeScript. But then in here, these are actually ways for me to like look up users. This is not part of authentication. This is part of me using the Clerk user data to display things on the site. And then I go into like the dashboard, for example, and we can do things such as we check to see if I've got a user. If we don't have a user, we throw an error that you're not logged in, and we should redirect. Oh no, we've got middleware that does that. Let me show you the middleware. So here's my middleware. And my middleware says that we've got a protected page. And so I'm kind of doing a janky like routes only thing. I could fix that in a handful of different ways. But then we check to see if the current route is one of the protected pages. If so, we redirect to sign in. Otherwise, we just pass through the page. So then on my pages, I have access to my Astro user, or my Clerk user inside the Astro events, which is, I mean, already pretty amazing. Then I can use my current user and the Clerk data includes the Stripe information, which is hooked up through webhooks. And that webhook is in the API here. You can see the Stripe integration in the webhook where we grab the Clerk client, we get a Stripe client, and then based on the event, we validate all that kind of stuff. And if we get that user, we grab the user, we get the subscription, and then we update, we get the subscription details, and then we update our customer to have the metadata for our given like Stripe thing, and then we add the details about their plan. So this is a, here's the customer, here is the status, here is the level, etc. And for all those pieces. But then when I'm in this page here, this admin page, I can then use all of this detail to get my specific Stripe sub. I can pull out their newsletter by using their email address, pull out their user details, and then I've got their subscription, whether or not they're a subscriber, and I can just show different details based on all of that, right? So really nice integration, really feels good to use. There's a lot of moving parts because Clerk is how I'm managing the users, Stripe is how I'm managing payments, Astro is how I'm managing the user dashboard, Sanity is how I'm actually managing like the user profiles, and I'm doing that because I want anybody who's on the show to be able to update their own profile, and I don't want them to have to like log into Clerk. It was kind of weird how that could all be done. And I didn't want to have to like make Clerk calls from Sanity every time we displayed a page. So there's some technical reasons why I made the choices I made, but each one of these things is working well. They've got good SDKs, so it's easy for me to send data from one to the other. And I'm actually going to look into some, like as we go on, some sort of advanced setup with like maybe ingest or something like that, so that we have stepped functions where like a thing has to pass before the next function goes, so that we don't have like if something fails, like I hit a rate limit on Clerk, I don't want that to then mean that like Stripe and Sanity and Astro all like pile up and die. It would pause and then try the Clerk thing again once the rate limit's cleared, and then go on to the next thing and the next thing. So lots still to do, but this is getting closer and closer. I'm almost ready to take this live. I'm probably going to take it live in like a beta, opt into the new experience thing and see if people can spot bugs for me. So if you're watching and you want to try, make sure that you go and spot a bug. Another fun thing that is happening that I should have talked about so much earlier. Oh my God, I have a workshop. It is happening. You can get a ticket. We've got up to 30 slots. Get your education budget, get your company to buy. We've got actually like team set up. So get your company to book for your team so that you can save money. You personally as a dev shouldn't have to pay for this. Your company should pay for this to train you. So go in there, get booked up, get lots of team seats, all those good things. But get booked. It's happening on September 17th. I'm going to teach you everything about Astro. It's going to be amazing. I took way too long to get to this, so I actually have to end this stream. But thank you all so much for hanging out today. I really appreciate you. Did I already drop the thing? Here's the link. But yeah, good chat today, y'all. Y'all were wonderful. Great questions, good discussion. Thank you all for hanging out, and we are going to see you next time.